also an option. Then removal to the Russian Federation. It's for the two sides to come to a unified position. I cannot prejudge.
Do you see that happening soon?
If Americans recognize that there is non-proliferation treaty, which was initiated, by the way, by the US and the Soviet Union, it's a cornerstone of international security. If they comply with this treaty, in a sense that they must recognize that Iranians can do some things in nuclear sphere under international control, as provided by the Safeguards Agreement, by the Non-Proliferation Treaty. If Americans recognize these obvious facts, I believe a solution may be found quite soon.
Let's move to Bushehr facilities. What is the situation at the moment?
As far as I know, 20 to 50 persons of Russian origin still remain on the territory of the plant. They remain there in order to monitor the safety of the equipment and construction materials.
There has been attacks close to the Bushehr facilities.
Very close, 250 meters.
Was there any damage to the facilities?
Yes, damage was done. Once on the 5th of April, one people was killed, Iranian national was killed as a result of missile attack. Missiles exploded 250 meters from operational reactor. If they miss or if they affect the reactor, the consequences would have been extremely negative for the whole region. Like Chernobyl disaster in the Persian Gulf. Not only Iranians, but also Arab countries of the Gulf would be affected very severely. We undertook a number of demarches in Washington and Jerusalem, underlying that it's intolerable.
There is a ceasefire going on, but any moment the war can start.
I agree.
What is your take on that? Do you think they are going to start the war again?
I don't know, but if we want to avoid the resumption of military activities, and if we want to avoid a nuclear disaster, which also might take place, we need to start normal negotiations with due patience. The negotiators should sit together and work until a final product is elaborated. So far, we observe something different. And from professional viewpoint, it's not normal, I would say.
You're a professional diplomat. For years and years and years, you worked in this environment. If you had to send a message to Tehran and to Washington, what would that be?
Guys, let's be serious. Let's stick to business-like efforts. Let's look at mutually acceptable solutions. If you need our help, we stand ready to provide our assistance.
Thank you for listening to the interview. You will find more in-depth conversation on the interview whenever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the UN, plus many more. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we're live in our CBC studios downtown. For your Tuesday morning show, we've got a wet street out there, wet streets, I should say, across most of Winnipeg, and that is because we had some rain. We'll see what the day holds when we dip into your forecast momentarily. Let's say good morning to the team. We're on air with you with the morning show from CBC until 8:37 a.m. May McKillop's here to direct the program. She's going to be on the air covering the commute. Good morning to Mr. Abby Adiyemi behind the controls, our senior tech. Abby covers weather on the show. And there's Mr. Darren Marash. Say hello, please, if you're watching the show stream live on YouTube. And we hope that you are. You can comment there as well, by the way, with anything that you're seeing. So we have much coming up. Right now, let's get started officially with our headlines. Here's Heather Wells from our news center.
Good morning. Well, federal NDP leader Avi Lewis was in Winnipeg last night hosting a town hall about Canada Post. The Crown Corporation is struggling financially and is scrapping door-to-door mail delivery for 4 million addresses across the country as part of restructuring. Lewis says ending door-to-door delivery for so many people is an attack on communities. Manitoba athletes are welcoming major new funding commitments from Ottawa. The federal government's earmarked more than $500 million for sport in Canada over the next 5 years. We're going to hear reaction coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heath.
Thank you.
Let's look at showers this morning, or I should say Winnipeg's looking at showers this morning. Those should end, though, and then a high of 17 degrees with a windy day ahead in the city. In Brandon, in your city, mix of sun and cloud for you. You do still have a 30% chance of some showers this afternoon and a high of 19. Really windy for you as well, up to 60K. So that forecast has shifted a bit from yesterday morning. And then in Thompson, mainly cloudy today. You also have a 30% chance of continuing drizzle and some fog this morning and a high of 10 degrees up in Thompson. Well, in the first hour of our show, a decorated Manitoba Paralympian reacts to the news that the federal government is increasing sport funding in Manitoba, as you just heard on the news headlines. So we'll get some deeper reaction. Plus, defense contractors need loans too. We're going to talk about Defense Security and Resilience Bank, what it is, why it's being headquartered in Canada. So that's coming up. And then later, more from the West End Biz. The community patrols say they're getting more calls about open drug use up and down Portage Avenue. And we heard part of that yesterday in the news too. Stay with us.
Arlo Parks has been making music since she was a teenager. And then in her 20s, she realized she never let herself just be, like kind of have the fun you're supposed to have at her age. She'll tell you what finally doing that looked like and how it led to her brilliant new record.
It's the right place at the wrong time.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. The leaders of the world's largest economies will soon be face-to-face. U.S. President Donald Trump is heading to Beijing today for a summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Trump has been focused on domestic issues as well as the war in Iran, but that changes this week as he tries to build bridges amid rising global trade tensions. Nick Harper joins me now from Washington. Nick, what do we know about this trip?
Martina, Donald Trump is heading to Beijing really with a laundry list of issues to discuss. Trade, of course, central to all of this. Remember, there is that tariff truce still underway after both countries imposed levies in excess of 100% on others' goods. And backing up that idea that trade is so key to this visit, the CEOs of some of the biggest US companies, Apple, Boeing, Tesla, Meta, they're also taking part in this trip. There's even some speculation here in the US that Donald Trump is looking for a mega deal, wanting Xi Jinping to invest about $1 trillion in the United States to build factories. The US is also looking for China to buy more agricultural products, specifically soybeans, and more US energy. And the US wants China to loosen restrictions on exports of Chinese rare earth materials. And in return, with AI competition being central to this trip as well, Beijing wants the US to ease export curbs that Washington has put in place on some of those advanced semiconductors.
Well, Nick, as we all know, China-US relations are strained. How could issues like the war in Iran and also US sanctions affect this visit?
Well, you know, President Trump was hoping to go into this really from a position of strength, hoping to have the Iran war wrapped up and hoping to play hardball with Xi on trade, and that's just not the case. Iran could completely overshadow this visit. The US wants China to use its influence to convince Iran to make a deal. Now, that is in theory in China's interest. It buys a lot of oil from Iran, but going on bended knee to Beijing, asking for diplomatic help from Xi Jinping, that's not the position that Donald Trump wanted to be in.
That is Nick Harper in Washington. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome.
The World Health Organization says the hantavirus outbreak related to a Dutch cruise ship appears to be contained. There are now 11 reported cases. 9 are confirmed. 2 are suspected. The head of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, says he's optimistic but cautious.
At the moment, there is no sign that we are seeing the start of a larger outbreak. But of course, the situation could change. And given the long incubation period of the virus, it's possible we might see more cases in the coming weeks.
There are no suspected or confirmed hantavirus cases here in Canada, but 9 people with links to the cruise ship are now in isolation in BC, Alberta, and Ontario. An out-of-control wildfire is burning in north-central Alberta, forcing dozens of people to flee their homes. The fire is near Whitecourt. That's about 180 kilometers northwest of Edmonton. As Katie Teeling reports, residents are eager for more information.
It's affecting a lot of, my home, my neighbors, my community, and the fire doesn't stop at community borders, so it doesn't take long for things to get out of hand.
Kate Trigg has lived in Woodlands County his whole life. When an evacuation order was issued, Trigg only had time to grab his dog and a few important documents. Now, he's anxiously waiting to see if the wildfire will impact his home.
To think that you might lose it all, well, you can just pray, right?
Evacuees are being sent to nearby Whitecourt, just 3.5 kilometers northwest of the fire. As of late Monday evening, nearly 100 residents had registered at the town's reception center. Dave Cush is the Reeve of Woodlands County. He expects that number to increase in the coming days.
There are a lot of trees in that area. Nothing's greened up. You still have a lot of the underbrush and the deadfall around the area. It just went up like a tinderbox.
Cush adds that the wildfire exploded in size from 1 hectare to at least 55 hectares, driven by high winds and dry weather, and it's still growing. The extent of the damage from the wildfire is unclear. Alberta Wildfire says night vision-equipped helicopters were deployed, and an update is expected later this morning. Katie Teeling, CBC News, Edmonton.
A new report from Quebec is highlighting a concerning trend. Boys are falling behind girls at school. Experts say it should concern everyone, and the stakes might be even higher than before. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson has more on the problem and a proposed solution.
Boys are not succeeding in school as well as girls.
Catherine Heck, professor of economics at the Université de Montréal, says she is not surprised by the findings of a new report on how boys fare at school. The report, authored by a Quebec provincial politician, zeroes in on how Quebec's regular public schools have greater academic and disciplinary disparities between boys and girls. The annual dropout rate for boys is 27.1% compared to 19.9% for girls. Professor Heck says that gap is happening across Canada and affects young people's long-term prospects.
If boys were graduating as much as girls are graduating from university, we would have over 65,000 more boys obtaining a university-level diploma. So it's a huge number.
She and other experts say the reasons behind this are many, including the learning skills and behaviors students get evaluated on in early schooling that tend not to favor boys. Toronto-based Matthew Morris taught middle school for 15 years and now is an instructor to teacher candidates at Ontario Tech University.
Generally, who has the nice and neat and clean desks? It's usually the girls. The boys are generally, particularly when they're younger, a little more disorganized in that sense.
One proposed solution to this problem, increasing physical activity at schools and less sitting at desks, which would not only help boys self-regulate better, but would be beneficial to students of all genders. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
The United Nations says armed drones are the leading cause of death among civilians in Sudan's civil war. Since the start of this year, close to 900 people have been killed. That, along with a different UN report earlier this month, highlighting another deadly threat. Landmines are also killing displaced people trying to return home. Naba Muhyiddin explains.
Hidden dangers are claiming lives across Sudan. As families return to areas still littered with landmines and unexploded ordnance, the United Nations says dozens of people have been injured, many of them children. In Khartoum and other former front lines, the ground itself has become a threat. For many displaced people like Muna Ahmed, returning home is no longer just about rebuilding. but about survival.
I want to go back, but I'm afraid for my children. They play outside, and you don't know what's under the ground. One step can change everything.
Clearance teams are working to remove explosives, but the scale of contamination is vast and resources are limited. Officials say thousands of devices have been found, yet many more remain hidden. Athari An-Naim is a demining officer.
We're working daily to clear affected areas and make them safe again, but it takes time, and we urge civilians to wait until zones are declared safe before returning.
The government and aid groups hope clearance efforts will help restore confidence and encourage safe returns, but for now, fear remains buried just beneath the surface. Naba Muhiddin for CBC News, Port Sudan.
Britain's Prime Minister is telling his cabinet he will get on with governing. Calls are growing within Keir Starmer's Labour Party for him to resign. Last week, the party was pummeled in local elections across the UK. Close to 20% of his caucus colleagues are urging him to quit. However, other members are backing Starmer. Darren Jones is a senior cabinet minister.
The Prime Minister is Keir Starmer. That's what people elected at the last general election. And look, we can play fantasy politics as much as you like, but I just think it's right to recognise that what the public care about is the future of our country, and that is what the government is getting on with delivering.
One junior minister has resigned from Starmer's cabinet in protest. The Eurovision Song Contest is back. It's campy, sometimes cringy, always a good source for a power ballad. And tonight, the world's biggest song contest kicks off in Vienna. But the mood is somewhat subdued. Spain, the Netherlands, Ireland, Slovenia, and Iceland are all boycotting. Some are even refusing to broadcast it. They say just as Russia was banned from Eurovision after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Israel should be banned for its bombardment of Gaza following the October 7th Hamas attacks. This is this year's entry from the host country, Austria. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. It is wet Tuesday morning. Well, at least the streets are wet from overnight. Thanks for being with us. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And you know what? It is May 12th. That means it is Manitoba Day. Happy birthday, Manitoba. We're 156 years old. If you want to call in and tell us why you live here, what you love about living here, we'd love to hear from you. 788-3205. This hour, a decorated Manitoba Paralympian is going to tell us what they like about the news that the federal government is increasing sport funding in Manitoba, so we'll have that story on. Also, we're going to talk about the Defence, Security and Resilience Bank and why it's being headquartered in Canada, so stay tuned for that. Plus, we'll go to Ottawa. It is Tuesday morning. We always like to catch up on what's going on in federal politics. Today on our column on Ottawa Report, Alex Bollingal will join us just before 7 o'clock. And we're going to talk about the continued push to fast-track major projects, which, of course, in Manitoba means Churchill, the Port of Churchill. So we'll have that conversation coming up. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's in our news center with other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Hydro says it cannot reveal the identities of companies hoping to build wind farms in this province. Hydro is looking for Indigenous-led companies to build wind farms. The Crown Corporation has qualified a number of those companies, but won't say how many or who they are. Meanwhile, the Manitoba Métis Federation has gone public with its proposal to partner with a major British company to build 30 windmills southeast of Riding Mountain National Park. Downtown Winnipeg's Fort Garry Hotel is up for sale. The 113-year-old hotel on Broadway was put up for sale back in 2019, shortly before the pandemic, but did not sell at that time. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
So in the news center, Head, this morning we were talking about the temperatures yesterday.
Yes.
Incredible. So remind us, Melita got really warm.
Yeah, Melita. Well, because Saskatchewan is so warm. So Melita, being so close to, southwest Saskatchewan, rose to 26.6, and that was Manitoba's hot spot. In Saskatchewan, Estevan was the national hotspot, just a little bit warmer than Melita. Estevan was 27 degrees.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah.
These swings
and
are
we were
wild.
not.
No, we were what, about 17 you said?
Yeah, 17 yesterday.
In Winnipeg? All right, well, let's see what today's going to bring. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi is here with our forecast for today. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Yes, most of the regions in the areas are actually waking up to light showers and wet streets this morning. Now, while the northern regions, we're still going to see lingering clouds. The south, we will be shaking off more like this damp start as this weather system moves through, leaving behind some kind of brisk morning breeze and a much milder afternoon. For the Red River Valley region at this time, Winnipeg sitting at 8 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Though those light showers were spotted earlier, it's just leaving behind like leftover chills that you might notice if you're making that transition from the bus, or better still from the, you're trying to hop into the car, you'd notice it. Just more like a northwest breeze, making it feel a bit cooler. And we should see a high for today, warm up close to 18 degrees. I see 17, but it depends on if the sun stays warmer, we might get to 17. And across the regions, down south, we're seeing 2 degrees to 9 degrees, while for the north, we're seeing a mix of more like unsettled conditions. We're still seeing temperatures just trying to crawl above 6 degrees for most regions. Thompson to the lake, we're looking at 1 and 3 degrees, expecting rain showers to end around the noon period. But it's a fresh and breezy start for the south with some damp mornings, while up north, we're still seeing those cloudy skies. Winnipeg, we're aiming for 17 today, and we get to, we're currently at 8 degrees.
I love how you worded that. I wrote it down. In Winnipeg, we're shaking off the damp start.
Yeah, it's more like
perfect.
A dance that, with that, imagine Melita with the heat yesterday and then some rain mixed with it. I don't think it's going to really be cool. It's more like damp.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
That's exactly what it feels like. All right. Let's get it into our traffic situation here this morning, and also remind you where you can call through the morning show. May McKillop's covering your morning commute. Hi.
Good morning. That's how I started my day. I walked out of the house and it was dry. The sidewalks were wet. By the time that I got driving 2 minutes in my car, the rain was coming down. So anyone active commuting today, you might want to keep an eye on what you wear for an outfit, because you might get a little bit of rain. Otherwise, I'm keeping an eye on drivers on westbound Portage. There's construction on Donald and Carlton due to construction around Portage Place. Both are down to 1 and 2 lanes. Other than that, I'm not seeing anything getting in the way so far. The morning is slow, but if you're seeing anything get in the way of your commute, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
So I should mention, coming out of the news today, last night there was a meeting here in Winnipeg all about the future of Canada Post. And NDP leader, newly elected NDP leader, Avi Lewis, is in Winnipeg, was here for that meeting, and will be in studio actually with us for an interview. So he will be here live after 8 o'clock on the show. Right now, speaking of the federal government, or the federal politicians rather, the government has announced last month that they earmarked more than $500 million for sport in Canada over the next 5 years. The $750 million will support specifically national teams and help bring more children and youth into sport. So the news has some local elite athletes pretty excited. Oak Bluffs, Manitoba's Leanne Taylor is the first Canadian woman to win a Paralympic medal in a triathlon. She spoke with CBC's Gavin Axelrod about the funding promise.
I think it's incredible. I think the impact of sport really can't be overstated, especially in the para world. I think that we have the opportunity to show people what people with disabilities are capable of, and there's something so powerful about that we're able to do through sport. And so funding that is just sort of saying, like, yes, we think this is important, that health and fitness and the ability of disabled people to really do things that nobody thought we were capable of, as kind of what it says to me.
One thing that some people have talked about is when you're an athlete, you want to be competing, but then sometimes you have to spend a lot of brain power finding sponsors and stuff like that. For yourself, how much of kind of maybe a burden is that in trying to just focus on training, but also worrying about that kind of stuff?
There's so much time and energy that goes into the logistics of sport, especially I compete in paratriathlon, so we have a racing wheelchair, a hand cycle, a leg brace for the swim. It's expensive and logistically complicated, and I'm maybe in a unique situation that I also have a 9-month-old. So when we're talking about allocating funding personally, there's a lot of other things that we need to spend money on. So having that kind of support in the sport is such an advantage for us to be able to worry about what matters and also kind of have the best of the equipment so that we can focus on ourselves and getting ourselves ready to perform.
One of the funding commitments is like money for athletes for training opportunities and mental health resources. How important do you think that'll be for folks?
I think that's honestly incredible. I think at the past few games we've definitely seen athletes excel, or maybe not, because of the mental health challenges that come along with the extreme pressure of the games. And so I think having funding specifically allocated towards that is helpful in terms of helping those athletes to perform, but then also helping those athletes to become advocates in general for mental health. And if we're getting those resources, we're talking about how important that mental health support is for us. It then in turn kind of encourages other people, if they need to access those kinds of services, to eliminate some of the stigma.
I know like athletes had been asking for more funding from the country for like a really, really long time. To see that now, how does that kind of feel?
And honestly, it feels really special. It's like every time someone supports you in some way in sport, it's like a vote of confidence saying like, yes, this is important and we believe in you. And so I think that's what athletes are taking that as our government thinks it's important and they believe in us.
What do you think it may do to help like other people who may face like financial barriers in sport?
Challenges in sport? I think there's such a barrier to entry in a lot of sports, and that's really tough because those athletes who maybe don't come from such privileged homes when they're younger and are looking at their parents to kind of buy that sporting equipment, I think it really helps to kind of say that sport is for everyone, able-bodied, disabled, financially stable, maybe less so. And so I think encouraging those people to be able to participate in sport and lowering that barrier for entry is super important.
One thing I'm wondering as well is like we had seen it kind of at the last Winter Olympics. I'm wondering how much like access to training and like the cost of training can kind of put like other countries ahead of maybe some countries who don't have that same access.
There's absolutely a difference in the access to training and the access to like experienced professional coaches and different types of resources. You really see what countries have a lot of those resources and which ones have to kind of struggle for it. And I think helping Canada to kind of be in that bucket of countries that are supporting and standing behind their athletes is so important for how we show up at the games and just how we feel as Canadians about sport and our country.
What are other athletes you've talked to from the country and just around saying about this kind of announcement?
I think people are excited. I think it gives people like that renewed energy, especially kind of coming from the end of the Winter Olympics recently or coming from, for me, getting back into sport. I think it just gives people that like renewed energy and the enthusiasm to kind of keep going when, you know, you get a lull in between the games. There's nothing going on right now, but our country is saying what you're doing right now matters.
That's Leanne Taylor with some thoughts on the funding that's been promised by the federal government for sport. Leanne is the first Canadian woman to win a Paralympic medal in triathlon. That interview with the CBC's Gavin Axelrod.
The puck may have dropped on the playoffs, but the news doesn't stop for hockey. I'm Brittany Greenslade, host of CBC Winnipeg News at 6. To get your local news, stream CBC Winnipeg News at 6, 24/7 on CBC Gem, the CBC News app, and selected streaming platforms. CBC Winnipeg News at 6, your local news on your favorite streaming device.
Well, we've picked a date for Niverville. Every month we go on the road with Information Radio, and so we have decided we're going to explore Niverville. Lots going on in that community, southeast of Winnipeg, making lots of headlines right now because of the hockey team, of course. The Nighthawks still in it at the federal level, national level. I should check how they did yesterday, though, before I'm talking about that. However, we are heading out to Niverville to explore all things Niverville. If you're from there and you have a story to pitch or you want to talk about your community, May 28th is the day that we are going to be live in Niverville. We're looking for a location still to do our show live from. So if you have anything to share that will help us out as we make our plans, you can always call us or email the morning show. radio893@cbc.ca is the place to email us, and 788-3206 is where you can call us. Well, at least 4 Canadian cities are going to bid to host the Defence, Security and Resilience Bank Canada was chosen as the headquarters for this institution last month after NATO countries and allies saw a need for low-cost financing for defense companies. Carl Skogstad is an associate professor of economics at Lakehead University. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being with us. Let's start with the basics. What's the Defense Security and Resilience Bank?
Well, it's a mouthful is what it is.
Sure is.
So as an economist, whenever I hear the word bank, I just think of it as an institution that's trying to match lenders and borrowers, right? And in this case, it happens to be a government-owned institution, so it's going to be owned by a number of NATO or NATO-friendly governments. And the people they're trying to lend money to in this case is not just any old business. It's going to be firms, mostly small and medium-sized ones, that are trying to purchase equipment in order to build more military goods, so weapons, equipment, uniforms, whatever it may be, as well as providing loans to governments who might not have as good a credit rating as Canada does to allow them to purchase more military equipment at a cheaper interest rate than they might otherwise be able to get on the open market. So those two important functions, loans to governments and loans to firms, both in that defense space.
Now we do in Manitoba, just so people know, we do make parts for some of these, some of the equipment, and we certainly make uniforms for some of the defense when you're talking about uniforms and here in Manitoba, but we're not on the list to host this. Why was Canada, when you look at the country, why were we chosen to host the bank?
Yeah, I mean, it is exciting news that we've been chosen to host, and I think it reflects a couple of things. So, one, we've been a vocal supporter of this for the past 10 years or so. So we're a big pusher of the project. We're a big voice behind it going forward. A couple of other voices that were behind it, Germany and the UK, have since pulled out. Germany says, I think we want more of a European Union-specific institution. The UK is just going a different way. So we're one of the biggest voices in the room, and we have been one of the voices in there for the longest time. But there's also a political aspect to it. I think even though it's not a NATO institution, it's certainly NATO adjacent, and there's always politics involved. So the US might say, well, we don't want the bank located in Europe. Europe might say, we don't want it located in the US. And so Canada can be a kind of a neutral third party here. And we do have the finance expertise in our workforce to pull something like this off. So I think it makes sense on a lot of grounds.
Somebody might wonder, why does a defense company need a loan from a bank? Because, there's contracts that come from governments.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense sometimes when you think about it, right? You think, well, you're getting this $1 million contract or multi-million or sometimes $1 billion contract. Why do you need a loan on top of that? So, and I think we're used to thinking about defense firms in a very different way, right? Sometimes we think of the big companies, Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, or in Canada here, General Dynamics or Irving Shipbuilding. But a lot of the supply chain is made up of small and medium-sized firms. So, just imagine a company that for the past 30 years has been supplying, rifles to the Canadian Armed Forces. And because we've spent so little those past 30 years, maybe they're used to producing a small amount each year. Like they need a machine to produce 1,000 rifles a year. Now suddenly we're asking them to produce 3,000 rifles a year, and they just can't produce that amount. And so traditionally, if a firm was in this situation, they would just go to a commercial bank, right, RBC or Bank of Montreal, and say, I need a loan to purchase some more machinery to produce these weapons. Well, what makes this difficult is this is a very small and niche sector. These commercial banks just might not have the expertise to evaluate those loans and say, is this a good loan? Is this a bad loan? Are we going to get our money back ultimately? Especially in the defense space, right? Because if you purchase a new piece of equipment that you need 10 years to pay off, but 5 years down the line, the government says, you know what, maybe we're not so sure about spending on weapons anymore, right? Then suddenly they're in this position of not getting their loan repaid. So this new institution is going to do two things. One, provide the expertise to these commercial banks to help them understand, hey, what's going to be a good firm to invest in and what might not be. And they'll also underwrite some of these loans. So if a loan does go bad, this new institution will cover some of those losses, making it more likely that a commercial bank would take on that loan. And so it's providing a real it's solving what we would call an information asymmetry problem in economics.
Before you go this morning, so the four cities, I have 5, like Toronto, Ottawa, Halifax, Vancouver, Montreal. Where do you think this is going to go?
Well, I mean, because it is a bank, you ultimately do need a financial center. So Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver all have finance clusters. Toronto, the largest by far. So, I mean, that would probably on the surface make the most sense to locate it there. Though all three of the cities are internationally connected, which is an important element to it as well, because this is not just a Canadian bank, it's an international bank. Ottawa and Halifax make a little less sense to me. Ottawa, it has that bureaucratic expertise, and it is like an international organization, so you do want some skilled workers in that area. But ultimately, it is a bank, and you want that finance expertise above all. Halifax has a large number of defense firms. They have a cluster of defense firms there. But again, this isn't about providing loans to just Canadian firms. It's more about providing loans to, over 20 countries. And so you don't necessarily need it to be located to one country's specific defense base. But there could be advantages to that, for sure.
All right, Carl, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Oh, you're very welcome. Have a good day.
You too. That's Carl Skogstad, an associate professor of economics with a focus on national defense. We reached him at Lakehead University. Time right now is 6:28 a.m. It is Tuesday, May 12th.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
Well, it is Manitoba Day, and that means that we hit the street yesterday with a quiz to find out how well Winnipeggers know Manitoba. So we hit the street here. And if you want to check out that quiz, I was just looking online. It is now posted at cbc.ca on our Listen app, so you can check out how people did. I think a lot of people did pretty well with, what's on our license plate. Friendly Manitoba. But there were questions about the official animal. There were questions about our official motto in Manitoba. Yes, we have one that a lot of people got kind of stumped on. So see if you can answer them correctly on this Manitoba Day. You can check out that item from Jim Arapito. Also, if you want to call us and let us know what you love about living in Manitoba or what maybe your favorite place to visit in Manitoba is. So we always love the advice, especially heading into May long weekend and the summer months. Where might we travel, right? In our own province. 788-3205. We'll get your calls on the air this morning as we celebrate. And you also can write to us at radio893@cbc.ca. Coming up, we have business news with Crystalie Ramlakan. She'll join us live with her report. We now have an estimate about how much counter tariffs have cost people in this country. This analysis from the Bank of Canada. So Crystalie's going to have that. She also is going to have some details. So the federal government and TELUS have announced some plans for a large-scale AI data center project. So we'll find out more about that as well. So Crystalie Ramlakan here live on CBC 89.3 FM with our business news right after your news from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 8 degrees. You just can't beat the scent of fresh rain. And that's what you are walking into this morning. Smells beautiful out there. The showers ending this morning, then a mix of sun and clouds. Another windy one today, a high of 17. Manitoba Hydro says it cannot reveal the identities of companies hoping to build wind farms in this province. This, even as some of those companies identify themselves. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Manitoba Hydro is looking for Indigenous-led companies to build wind farms. The plan is to add 600 megawatts of generating capacity by 2035. The projects have to be at least 51% Indigenous-owned. Hydro has qualified a number of these companies, meaning they're eligible to submit proposals. But the Crown Corporation won't say how many companies are qualified, never mind who they are. This is happening while the Manitoba Métis Federation has gone public with its proposal to partner up with Renewable Energy Systems, a major British player. This partnership wants to build 30 windmills southeast of Riding Mountain National Park. The PC opposition urges Manitoba Hydro to be more transparent. The NDP government says it can't reveal more because it has to protect the integrity of the selection process. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba athletes are welcoming major new funding commitments from Ottawa. The federal government has earmarked more than $500 million for sport in Canada over the next 5 years. Paralympic medalist Leanne Taylor says athletes are excited.
Honestly, it feels really special. It's like every time someone supports you in some way in sport, it's like a vote of confidence saying like, yes, this is important and we believe in you. And so I think that's what athletes are taking that as, this our government thinks it's important and they believe in us.
The bulk of the funding package will go to national sports organizations to help them invest in safe sports systems and grow participation among young people. Nearly $50 million over 5 years will go to athletes, which includes better mental health support. Downtown Winnipeg's Fort Garry Hotel is up for sale again. The 113-year-old hotel on Broadway was put up for sale in 2019, shortly before the pandemic, but did not sell. The new listing was announced by a brokerage and a real estate firm. The landmark hotel has 10 stories and 262 rooms. The Fort Garry is also a National Historic Site. Federal NDP leader Avi Lewis was in Winnipeg last night hosting a town hall about Canada Post. The Crown Corporation is struggling financially, and it's scrapping door-to-door mail delivery for 4 million addresses across the country as part of a restructuring. But Lewis says ending door-to-door delivery for so many people is an attack on communities.
The notion that the Postal Service loses money is absurd. We don't expect the firefighters to make money. We don't expect the police to make money. The Postal Service is a fundamental public service. It should be run for everyone's benefit.
Lewis was joined at the town hall by Winnipeg Centre MP Leah Gazan and officials with the Postal Workers Union. They are calling on the Liberal government to reverse Canada Post's plans. A wildfire is burning just outside Whitecourt, Alberta. That's about 2 hours north of Edmonton. The fire triggered an evacuation order for some residents. Dave Cush is the Reeve of Woodlands County.
The evacuation order is still in place. We're trying to build a guard around the backside of the fire, trying to work it all night. There's going to be crews on the ground. There's going to be night vision, helicopters and buckets. They're going to be trying to target a lot of the primary hotspots that they can find to try to keep things from spreading.
The wildfire is between 55 and 60 hectares in size. 97 evacuees have registered at the reception center. U.S. President Donald Trump will depart Washington today for a state visit to China. He arrives Wednesday and will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The trip was supposed to have taken place earlier this year, but Trump delayed the visit when the U.S. launched a war against Iran. Trump will travel to China with some of the biggest American corporate leaders, including Elon Musk, the head of Tesla and SpaceX, and Tim Cook from Apple. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. People in Flin Flon got their first look yesterday at the northern city's new indoor pool complex. Volunteers have pushed for a new pool for more than a decade, and they held donation drives, 50-50 draws to help cover the costs of it. Board volunteer Kara Plamandan.
It's going to be wonderful for children and adults and everybody in between, just to have the lessons again and to get everybody swimming safely, and the recreation of it, having a nice warm place to go in the winter that is fun and people get activity.
And that is Kara Plamondon. The new pool won't be fully open, though, until more lifeguards are trained, and the full opening is set for later this summer. You can find more news throughout the day. Just go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
They were so excited about that when we were up in that community. Yeah. I can't tell you. So, thank you for...
It's been a while, right?
Oh,
since
it
they've
has.
had a pool.
Yeah, and when you're up there, you really realize, they're not a fly-in community, of course, but, they're isolated enough, up north where they are, that it's a huge deal, that pool. Yeah.
Yeah, and people need to know how to swim. Like a place like Flin Flon, anywhere in the summer, there's lakes, there's rivers.
Yeah. And they also have a population that's aging a little bit. So they were talking about that and sort of the need for that for, just for exercise for people and how much the old pool was used. And anyway, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into the forecast. We are going to be in swimming weather pretty soon. We're finally getting warmer. But right now we have to get over some early morning rain, Abby.
Yeah, we need to get over the damp conditions. We are waking up to this morning, expecting a mix of sun and clouds across most of the regions, with the south still, some areas down south still seeing these showers taper off, though the north stay mostly cloudy, with temperatures hovering across board between 1 degree and 8 degree across most of the regions. For forecast for the city and nearby areas in the Red River Valley region, we're looking at a few showers ending this morning. This will be followed by a mix of sun and clouds, Mercy, and then we're seeing current temperatures just hover near 8 degrees for both the Forks and the airports. Breezy conditions as the winds comes from the northwest. It's going to be reaching up to 60 km later. For the city, we're expecting a high of 17 degrees today, with temperatures more like around this 8 degrees before we get there, and then some fog patches would build later in the evening, but that should clear as we get into the overnight period. For the Pembina Valley region, from Morden towards Port Perry, we're looking at 8 degrees also, with showers ending. We see highs around 19 degrees. Brandon towards Nipawin, cloudy there. There's a slim chance of showers. Current temperature is 6 degrees. You warm up to 19, and later Dauphin all the way towards the Russell and Roblin area. We're seeing already sunny conditions there. 3 degrees at this time. You warm up to 20. There's a slim chance of afternoon showers and maybe some thunderstorms mixed into that. Gimli and nearby areas, good morning to you. You are seeing a few showers also. Current temperatures around 5 degrees. You warm up to 16. Then we cross into the central parts and all the way up north. We're looking at sunny conditions around the Park Flin Flon. We're seeing 2 degrees there. A high would be around 16. Foggy conditions around Norway House. We're seeing 4 degrees there. Showers also mixed with those foggy conditions. You're seeing that should end as you get into the morning. Highs will be around 16. Thompson, mostly cloudy. There's a slim chance of drizzle in the forecast. Current temperatures around 3 degrees. You warm up to 10 later. Gillam, we're seeing 4 degrees there. There's a good chance of showers also in the mix. You get to 6 degrees later. While for Tudula Lake, we're looking at this drizzle that you're experiencing. That should end later. You're at 1 at this time. You warm up to 4. While for Churchill, we're also spotting rain there. Current temperatures 2 degrees. You warm up to about, you don't see temperatures 1 for Churchill today. It drops to -1 this afternoon. So it's more like we're seeing this cloudy rain conditions clear into mild temperatures today. But for the city, we're expecting more like a windy afternoon, Marcy. Highs would be around 17 degrees. Right now, it is only 8.
Okay, what do you love about Manitoba, Abby? It's Manitoba Day.
I love the skies. I always say Manitoba should be more like seen as a sky tourism destination.
I agree with you, actually. I think that's a really good answer.
It's a sky tourism destination for me.
And I think north and south, because when you go to Churchill, of course, you have the tourism for the Northern Lights. But, I mean, all over the province, you get Northern Lights.
All you just have to do is look up at night, and you don't have, like, hills or whatever blocking you. It's just more like this plain that you can look up and you can see.
It's also about the stars, though. It's also about the blue of the skies, the color of the skies. I should find some photos. They came up in my memories this week. They were not color touched, and the purples and the pinks and the sunsets. Like, I mean, really amazing skies here that we take for granted. Also, I will say this for a day like this, the thunderstorms. The cracks of lightning that come across, how dark the sky and moody. My niece and nephew, who are in BC, they like to come back to Manitoba, and they ask me. Sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, Auntie, does it really sound like thunder, like loud, and does it crack and how does the lightning look?" Because they don't get that in their skies in BC.
True. And one other thing I would just toss into the skies, the bisons.
Okay, why are the bison in the sky?
No, I didn't say the bison in the sky. I said mixed with the, me enjoying the skies. The
I'm like, is there a constellation or something?
This is not the Avatar with flying bisons.
You're adding, okay.
I'm adding the bison.
You're adding the bison.
You get to see it. You get to see it like it's something you can easily go and you know where to find it. And my favorite bison around me for now, Marcy. My favorite is the one called Blizzard at the zoo at this time. There's a bison called Blizzard, and I just love going to see that guy.
Oh, is he the white? He's the white guy, right?
He's the white guy.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so Abby's laying down with the bison and the skies. What have you got for us, Manitoba? We'll be sharing all of our reflections through the morning. And if you want to give us a call, please do. It's Manitoba Day. 788-3205. What's your favorite why in Manitoba? Either to visit, to see, your favorite thing about living here, something we take for granted maybe. You can also write to us at radio893@cbc.ca. May McKillop's here to weigh in on the commute. Hi.
Good morning, Marcy. I'm keeping an eye on westbound Portage with the construction around Portage Place there. Westbound Portage is losing the right-hand curb lane due to that construction. So Donald is down to just one lane and Carleton to Edmonton is down to 2 lanes. And I know for me in my commute during the week when I'm not working this shift, it's been slowing me down. Sometimes traffic backed up to Maine. So I'm curious what's going on there today or anything else going on along your commute. Give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, May. Let's get into what's happening in the business news this morning. Crystal Ramlakan joins us with her report. Hello to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy. Can I just add that
Please.
I agree with the skies. Like when I go home to Winnipeg, I feel like I can breathe. Like I just feel like there's so much sky available to just encapsulate me. And I just feel like it's so beautiful and flat and the sky's so big there. And you don't get that everywhere.
You don't. And if you haven't been somewhere else where you don't get it, you don't know what we take for granted here. I think it really is one of those things for sure. Yeah. I love that. It's a nice sentiment. Breathe in with that big open sky. All right, let's talk about an estimate. We now have an estimate about how much counter tariffs have cost people in the country. What can you share?
Yes, that's right. So analysts at the Bank of Canada estimate prices on goods were roughly 6% higher than non-tariffed goods. So the federal government imposed tariffs on some groceries, clothing, and household staples from the U.S. for about 6 months last year in retaliation to U.S. tariffs. And the analysis estimates nearly a quarter of the counter tariffs were passed on to consumers. Now, the boost added about 0.3 percentage points to headline inflation, but inflation largely floated around the central bank's 2% target last year. And the bulk of the higher prices fell back in line 3 months after the government removed most of the counter tariffs in September. And this is something interesting. Researchers found products flagged as being subject to tariffs were more likely to sport higher prices than tariffed goods that did not advertise the impact of duties. So analysts say the tariff banners helped shift the burden off retailers, reducing customer backlash and actually giving them more room to pass on cost increases. So most Canadian goods are still able to enter the U.S. tariff-free thanks to the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement that we have. But U.S. tariffs on steel, aluminum, autos, and other key industries remain in place. And Canada continues to levy counter tariffs on select steel, aluminum, and U.S.-made autos that do not comply with CUSMA.
To another story here, the federal government and TELUS have announced plans for a large-scale AI data center project. What do we know about it?
Yes, that's right. So they say the project in British Columbia will boost Canada's sovereign computing and artificial intelligence infrastructure. AI Minister Evan Solomon says the 3 facilities will deliver one of the world's most powerful and sustainable AI infrastructure clusters. And TELUS says it will expand its existing Kamloops data center and develop 2 new Vancouver facilities in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood and in the city's downtown. And Solomon says taking such chances are necessary for the country to remain competitive globally.
There's risks in building. We shouldn't sugarcoat it. Of course there's financial risks when people are investing billions of dollars. When you're building infrastructure, this is why the Prime Minister said, when we build, we have to build right.
Now, no pricing for the project has been released. However, the federal government has committed $2 billion over 5 years under an initiative to identify and boost large-scale sovereign data centers.
Let's stay with AI quick before you go. Google says it stopped criminal hackers from trying to use the tech.
Yes, that's right. So Google says it disrupted a criminal group's attempt to use artificial intelligence to exploit another company. And this adds to the heightened worries across government and private industry about AI's risks for cybersecurity. So Google shared limited information about the hackers and the target, but says it represents a moment cybersecurity experts have warned about for years. Malicious hackers arming themselves with AI to supercharge their ability to break into the world's computers. And it comes at a time of leaps in AI's ability to find vulnerabilities. So Google says it observed a group of prominent threat actors planning a big operation. The vulnerability allowed them to bypass two-factor authentication to access a popular online system administration tool. And Google says it notified the company and law enforcement and was able to disrupt the operation before it caused any damage. So Google found evidence the hackers used an AI large language model, the same technology that powers popular chatbots, to discover this vulnerability. That's what they used. And Google didn't reveal which model was used, only that it was likely not Google's Gemini or Anthropic's Claude Mythos. Now, Google also didn't reveal which group it suspected in the attack, but said there was no evidence it was tied to an adversarial government, though the company says groups tied to China and North Korea have been exploring similar techniques.
All right, Crystal Lee, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Business News on CBC for your Tuesday, May 12th with Crystal Lee Ramlakan. Well, there's a nice message in this tune we're about to play from Manitoba's Kelly Bado. She says it's about everyone. Come everybody, no matter your language, your culture. We're all human first. And the name of the song is Come Everybody.
Lately I'm thinking that maybe we're not so different. Let's get together and lay down what keeps us apart. It doesn't matter if none of us speak the same language. Just let the melody move you and free who you are. Feel the beat.
always feel a little lighter when I listen to Kelly Bado's music. That tune is called Come Everybody. Of course, she hails from here in Winnipeg. It is 9 minutes to 7 o'clock. It is your Tuesday morning, May the 12th. It's cloudy out there, 8 degrees after some morning rain. And it's cloudy and 6 over in Brandon, mostly cloudy and 3 in Thompson. Going to be a very windy day in southern Manitoba. A high of 17, though, in Winnipeg. And over in Brandon today, you're getting even warmer. Your high is 19 degrees. Up in Thompson, you're starting with 3 degrees this morning. Cloudy, chance of drizzle, and some fog is possible for you. Your high today is 10. Well, next on the show, let's talk about major projects and funding coming from the feds. In Manitoba, you might recall that in April, Manitoba's Premier, Wab Kinew, said that Ottawa's hinted it wants liquefied natural gas shipping out of Churchill within 4 years. That capability has to be built by 2030, or federal support for an expansion of the port in Churchill could be off the table. So that after a meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney that happened in April. There are, of course, other projects that are pushing ahead right now in Ottawa. A new suite of legislative changes have been coming now that they say would streamline the approval processes for other projects further. These announcements have been applauded by some who want to get shovels in the ground in other provinces like Alberta. Their Premier Danielle Smith is pleased, but environmental groups and even former Liberals feel differently. Let's have a look at what's been announced this week. Alex Ballingall is with us, Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So how are what I'm talking about this week, the announcements, different from the actual major project office, which has Churchill on their radar, and then other infrastructure initiatives that we've also heard about in the last year?
Yeah, I think, probably the way to understand this, at least you to understand where the government is coming from, is that this is all in the context of Carney's kind of core mission, which is, there's this rupture, as he likes to say, quote unquote. The United States is less trustworthy. We need to reduce our dependence on the States. We need to really build things faster here so that we can export more to other countries and fortify our economy and be more kind of resilient and self-reliant. So the major project stuff you mentioned, the LNG for Churchill, all these other things, high-speed rail, getting this stuff done faster, that's kind of been the core mission of the government and the way they've kind of framed everything. And so this week, these new proposed changes are kind of the next step in that project. And I think what's different generally is that last year with their major projects legislation, which, was controversial, I think we've spoken about it before, they were kind of creating a way to go around the existing federal system for project assessments in the name of expediency. Some things were so important, we have to create a new regime to go around the existing rules to make this happen faster. Now they're proposing changes to the existing rules themselves and saying that the whole assessment regime needs to be more streamlined, so everything kind of moves faster, with the goal of having a federal review last no more than 1 year. So that's kind of the general gist of what they're doing. There are controversial elements. There's been red flags raised by environmentalists. The former Environment Minister, Stephen Thibeault, has said this is worse than anything Stephen Harper did to environmental assessments, which, for progressive environmentalist types is quite a claim. There are some things that will get more attention, I think. Things like, they want to create economic zones where projects would kind of be assumed to be pre-approved. They want to allow for, in some cases, early construction to start before an approval is actually made. They want to give Cabinet the power to kind of ditch what they call the jeopardy test for at-risk species, which is like a test that would be applied if a project puts an at-risk species at risk of disappearing, that they would maybe not go through with it. They're going to give Cabinet power to go around that. So there are controversial elements to it, but generally I think this is them pushing the kind of pro-development, we have to build quickly agenda.
So obviously I mentioned, I shouldn't say obviously, but maybe you could guess this, that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is pleased. I do want to ask, though, that no one's talking about the separatist push in Alberta or pipelines, in the pipeline conversation, rather. So to what degree do you think an Ottawa-backed pipeline could neutralize that separatism question in that province?
I mean, I think we just saw them in recent years, the federal government buy and then bankroll the Trans Mountain expansion, something like $35 billion. To create this new pipeline. We still have the separatist movement. So, I think that the grievances that a lot of people in Alberta feel, and maybe in some cases, I'm from the interior BC, there's people who feel this kind of alienation throughout a lot of that part of the country, in Western Canada. Just like a deep grievance, almost an identity level, emotional antipathy towards Ottawa and kind of central Canada that I think is a big part of the core hardcore separatists. That I'm not sure even the approval of a new pipeline that Alberta wants would neutralize them or sway them from what I think is a very kind of like identity level, bread in the bone conviction of Alberta independence.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe for the independent curious and the softer people, that could maybe sway or swing the needle somewhat. But I don't think a new pipeline would neutralize the movement entirely. It would maybe make it less effective and kind of dampen it or diminish it. But I think there is a hardcore there that is kind of unswayable, maybe potentially.
All right, Alex, we'll leave it there this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Ballingal, the Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. It is now 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Still ahead on our program today after 7. The West End Biz Community Patrols say they're getting more calls about open drug use in the community, and that's caused some safety concerns.
Something that we've been communicating to the province is that around the buildings that have been opened for the Your Way Home strategy, we have seen an increase in behavior that's dangerous, that's violent, that's threatening. It's quite concerning to us.
That's Joe Cornelson, the Executive Director of the West End Biz. They run the West End Patrol. We're going to talk after 7 o'clock to the City Councillor for the area about what's happening and what she thinks needs to be done. Also in the next hour of Information Radio, coming up at 10 to 8, yesterday we heard an incredible story from a Manitoba couple who has benefited from a health technology called Optune. I'm going to get it wrong. Optune Geo, there it is. He lives with glioblastoma. That is a form of brain cancer. And this is actually this tech. You put it on your head. It has shrunk the tumor in his head. So Manitoba doesn't cover this tech. They do cover it in BC. We wanted to learn more about it. There's a review right now to see if they're going to cover it in our province. So we're going to talk to the CEO of the Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada in the next hour to find out more about it. So stay tuned. That is coming up and to find out their view on it. It is 8 degrees. It's mostly cloudy after some rain, a high of 17 today. It's going to be windy, winds northwest 40 to 60. But after those few showers end this morning, we should be in the clear for tonight and then sunshine for tomorrow and a high 22. Wow. But right now, 8 degrees, as we mentioned, in Winnipeg. Traffic moving so far. We'll update something if needed. 788-3093. Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Downtown Winnipeg's Fort Garry Hotel is up for sale again. The 113-year-old hotel on Broadway was put up for sale in 2019 but was not sold. This new listing was announced by a brokerage and real estate firm. The Fort Garry also is a National Historic Site. Federal NDP leader Avi Lewis was in Winnipeg last night hosting a town hall about Canada Post. The Crown Corporation is talking about restructuring and ending door-to-door mail delivery for about 4 million addresses. Lewis says that is an attack on communities. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
Avi Lewis will be live here as well a little bit later in the morning, making his way into our CBC studio after 8. Right now, it's time for World Report, the latest in national and international news. Stay with us on CBC.
On the Current. Under the stairs too. But some people just do it in the halls. You just vape anywhere that's not high traffic.
If you have a teenager in your life, chances are they have a story to tell about vaping in the washroom at their school. Some kids aren't even using the bathroom at school because so many kids are in there vaping. We'll talk about how high school administrators are redesigning the washrooms to fight the addiction coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. U.S. President Donald Trump leaves for Beijing today for a high-stakes summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Despite long-running and recent tensions, including the war in Iran, the leaders of the world's two most powerful economies are looking to stabilize their relationship. Lisa Jing has a closer look at where there may be room for compromise.
He'll bring up Taiwan, I think, more than I will.
U.S. President Donald Trump on what he thinks will come up when he meets with Chinese President Xi Jinping, more explicit opposition to Taiwan independence, and
I think that a discussion will be a little bit about energy and about the very beautiful country of Iran.
The highly anticipated meeting, postponed because of the war there, could yield some deals, say observers, like China buying more U.S. soybeans or oil and liquefied natural gas to reduce the trade deficit, while Beijing may want restrictions on advanced AI chips eased for continued access to its rare earth minerals. Dan Wang is the China director of Eurasia Group.
We can expect maybe extended truce in trade war, and maybe more of a contained technology competition. And that would be the best case scenario for both sides.
Expectations for this summit and hopes of a broader agreement, tempered by competition and mistrust for almost a decade, and a trade war dating back to Trump's first term, escalating dramatically last year when U.S. tariffs reached 145% on some Chinese imports.
It's already a pretty major breakthrough.
Yun Sun, China program director at Washington think tank the Stimson Center, says the fact the meeting is even happening is a win.
It's already demonstrating that both sides have the willingness to improve their relationship.
Though some say Trump needs to bring back something tangible. To that point, he's traveling with more than a dozen business leaders, including his on-again, off-again rival, Elon Musk. Lisa Sheng, CBC News, Toronto.
The head of the World Health Organization says there is no sign of a broader hantavirus outbreak. There are now 9 confirmed and 2 suspected cases, all in passengers or crew who were on the Dutch cruise ship. But Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says there will likely be more.
Because of the interaction while they were still in the ship, especially before they started taking some infectious prevention measures, because of the interaction, we would expect more cases.
Health officials in British Columbia say none of the 4 Canadians who were on the ship and are now in isolation had any known contact with an infected person. Israeli lawmakers have approved a bill allowing a special tribunal to try and also sentence Palestinians accused of taking part in the October 7th attacks. That tribunal will be able to issue death sentences, and the trials will be televised. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh is following developments from Jerusalem.
Passing the Knesset 93-0, a new law allowing Israel to hold special military tribunals for Palestinians accused in the October 7th Hamas-led attacks, with the authority to impose the death penalty. Lawmaker Simcha Rothan sponsored the bill.
This law will bring justice. This law will create the framework to punish those who did this. This law will tell the world the story of October 7th.
1,200 people died on October 7th, 2023. Hundreds more were kidnapped. The tribunals will be live-streamed. Human rights groups are concerned they'll become show trials, including evidence obtained under torture. They'll also only apply to Palestinians. Muna Haddad is with the human rights group Adala.
What this legislation does, it's a very specific legislation against a specific group. It's problematic because it contravenes the basic ideas of criminal law.
But in a rare show of unity in Israeli politics, the tribunals are being supported across party lines. Shelley Talmern is an opposition lawmaker.
I think the people of Israel are in complete agreement that this is what should happen.
Meanwhile, a separate law will also allow the death penalty against Palestinians convicted of future murders of Israelis. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Ukraine's president says Russia is resuming its attacks as a brief ceasefire expired at midnight. Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 200 drones were launched by Russia overnight. Russian officials say their military shot down more than 24 Ukrainian drones. The truce was in place over the weekend while Moscow held its annual military parade. The Kremlin scaled down the event this year amid concerns Ukraine could attack Moscow. Latvian and Canadian troops are testing battlefield ground drones during a major NATO exercise this week. They're drawing directly on recent Ukrainian tactics. And as Murray Brewster is learning in Riga, it's revealing how electronic warfare and unmanned systems are reshaping modern conflict.
This is the first day when actually we are at the stage when the both forces are actually in face-to-face in the main battle area.
Latvian Lieutenant Colonel Andris Bruvaris, who alongside Canadian troops is putting remotely piloted vehicles through their paces.
For instance, reconnaissance, I don't need to send people behind lines. I can use the drones for that.
Many of the systems they're using are Ukrainian. President Volodymyr Zelensky recently claimed that Ukrainian forces captured a Russian position using nothing but uncrewed aerial and ground drones. No ground troops. He heralded the achievement as the dawn of a new age of warfare. Canadian Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rochelle, who is part of the training exercise in Latvia, was more cautious, saying drones can't replace soldiers yet.
I think they are a very important addition, but I do see UAS and the UGV as complementary systems. So maybe one day they'd get to the point where they could do these types of operations regularly.
The exercise comes as Latvia deals with a different drone crisis. 2 Ukrainian combat drones crashed in the Baltic nation last week, apparently nudged off course by Russian jamming and interference. The lack of air defense has cost the defense minister his job. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Riga, Latvia.
A new report from Quebec is highlighting a concerning trend. Boys are falling behind girls at school. Experts say it should concern everyone, and the stakes might be even higher than before. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has more on the problem and a proposed solution.
Boys are not succeeding in school as well as girls.
Catherine Heck, professor of economics at the Université de Montréal, says she is not surprised by the findings of a new report on how boys fare at school. The report, authored by a Quebec provincial politician, zeroes in on how Quebec's regular public schools have greater academic and disciplinary disparities between boys and girls. The annual dropout rate for boys is 27.1% compared to 19.9% for girls. Professor Heck says that gap is happening across Canada and affects young people's long-term prospects.
If boys were graduating as much as girls are graduating from university, we would have over 65,000 more boys obtaining a university-level diploma. So it's a huge number.
She and other experts say the reasons behind this are many, including the learning skills and behaviors students get evaluated on in early schooling that tend not to favor boys. Toronto-based Matthew Morris taught middle school for 15 years and now is an instructor to teacher candidates at Ontario Tech University.
Generally, who has the nice and neat and clean desks? It's usually the girls. The boys are generally, particularly when they're younger, a little more disorganized in that sense.
One proposed solution to this problem, increasing physical activity at schools and less sitting at desks, which would not only help boys self-regulate better, but would be beneficial to students of all genders. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can check out Deanna's full story, including interviews with families, on the YouTube page for CBC News, The National. The European Union wants to rein in social media companies. EU President Ursula von der Leyen says the bloc is working on regulations to protect children and youth.
Young men are getting hooked on games that are designed to manipulate them into spending more and more money. Young women are targeted with beauty product ads the moment they untag themselves in a photo. And these are deliberate choices by tech providers. Choices made so they can profit from children's vulnerability, to cash in on their fears and moments of self-doubt.
Von der Leyen says the EU will specifically target X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. She's calling for an age limit to access social media and restrictions on addictive design practices. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us here on this Tuesday, May 12th. It is Manitoba Day. We appreciate having you along with us. We're collecting some comments on what you love about Manitoba. We're going to read one of those in just a moment as we turn 156 today. Thanks for being here. This hour on the program, we are going to be talking about a follow to yesterday's interview with a Manitoba couple. Some amazing medical technology has shrunk a tumor in this one man's brain. They came in to tell us about it. May is Brain Tumor Awareness Month. We're going to talk to the CEO of Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada about what they think of this technology. It is funded in BC. It is not yet funded in Manitoba. They're reviewing it right now, and it's a complicated technology to review, so we'll find out more about it just before 8. In addition, the West End Biz Community Patrol say they're getting more calls about open drug use in the community. It's caused some safety concerns. We reported on some of that from a business yesterday. Today we're going to talk to the area councillor in Winnipeg. So stay tuned. Right now, Heather Wells is here with other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Hydro says it cannot reveal the identities of companies hoping to build wind farms in this province. Hydro is looking for Indigenous-led companies to build wind farms. The Crown Corporation has qualified a number of them, but won't say how many or who. Meanwhile, the Manitoba Métis Federation has gone public with its proposal to partner with a major British company to build up to 30 windmills southeast of Riding Mountain National Park. Manitoba athletes are welcoming major new funding commitments from Ottawa. The federal government's earmarked more than $500 million for sport in Canada over the next 5 years. We'll hear some reaction in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Heather, you want to answer the question, or you need some time to think about what you love about Manitoba or where you most like to visit?
But that's where I grew up, and I think it's just the most beautiful part of the province. But all of Manitoba, there's so many different areas. It's vast and topography changes. The people are amazing. Yeah, it's a great place to be.
Well, here's someone weighing in on winter, and I agree with you. Summer comes and we forget so quickly. We're all like that, right? On YouTube, watching our show this morning, actually, one of the commenter, Jethro, wrote in to us, Manitoba's looking pretty good for 156, Jethro says. Must be all that natural refrigeration we get for 6 months of the year. Really helps keep the wrinkles away. It's a good way to look at it, right?
It doesn't work for me, but...
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to folks writing in. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can comment in the comment section. You can email the show, radio893@cbc.ca. You can call us, 788-3205. Okay, let's find out what's going on in the actual weather today. Abby.
Yeah, Marcy, the showers tapering off in most of the regions, but we still expect it to return much later in the day. It's more like a warm sweater or light jacket kind of start you need for today. Forecast for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're looking at cloudy conditions that should clear as you get towards the morning, followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Current temperature sits at 7 degrees. We're tracking that both at the Forks and at the airport. Some breezy conditions becoming windy from the northwest as the day progresses, and we'll see this temperature stay on this steady climb to about 17 degrees later in the day, and similar cool and refreshing stats across most of the regions. In the south, temperatures between 1 and 6 degrees at this time, transitioning to a mix of sun and clouds. While the northern half, more like mild spring morning. We're seeing temperatures also between 2 degrees and about 7, depending on where you are. Some sunny conditions around the Parr and Thompson at this time. For Winnipeg, we're expecting some clear conditions, mild temperatures. We see just a bit of rain maybe later in the day, but we'll warm up to 17. Currently, we are at 7 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
May, what's up in the morning commute?
You know, no calls on the commuter line so far, and I hope that means that nothing is getting in the way, but I've been keeping an eye on my drives along westbound Portage, just past Portage Place, because of the construction there. So Donald is down to 1 lane and Carleton to Edmonton down to 2 lanes, and I've been noticing every day that's slowing things down quite a bit, but I'm curious what's going on in our city and across the province even. So if you wanted to pass along a message about your commute, give me a call at 204-788-3093.
Well, from bus shelters to sidewalks to some of the places along Portage Avenue where people have been seen using drugs. All of these things are raising safety concerns, as we've been mentioning in the news this week. Joe Cornelson is Executive Director of West End Biz. They run the West End Patrol. He says they've been seeing more open drug use in the area compared to previous years. He spoke with CBC's Chloe Friesen on Up to Speed yesterday.
You know, the West End, people will know that it's a neighborhood that experiences, quite a bit of poverty compared to other neighborhoods. So that means that often people are interacting in public space. They're walking on the sidewalks. They are, living in a much more public way than in other neighborhoods. And that means that in that public realm, safety is that much more important. We need to make sure that people feel comfortable, feel safe on the sidewalks.
And we're going to see more people out and about, right? Because the weather is now getting warmer, inching there. That was Jor Cornelison, Executive Director of West End Biz. They run the West End Patrol. Now, some store owners worry they're going to lose customers, though, because people are now afraid to come to their shops. We heard that this week in the news. There was a shop that had a fire actually set in their corridor and in their front door. Our next guest is worried as well. Cindy Gilroy, City Councillor for the Daniel McIntyre Ward. She says the neighborhood needs more support to address the safety concerns, and she's been waiting for us patiently on Zoom. Hi there. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for being with us. So what have you been hearing from businesses who have these, real safety concerns? What have they been telling you?
Businesses are very concerned. It's not only impacting, customers coming in, but being able to retain staff. And so I know that the staffing concern is also an issue for many businesses. And we're also talking about local schools. One of the concerns that you're talking about is along Portage, Sherbrooke, and Maryland. And, Gordon Bell School is right there. And many of these children have to walk by the open drug use or violence that is occurring. So it's definitely a huge concern in the community, not only for businesses, but also for many residents in the community.
Where are specifically some of the areas where people are seeing, the open selling of drugs and such? Is it that area you were just talking about?
Yeah, I'm also having issues along Sargent Avenue. And really close to Burnell. So there's a lot of businesses that are really impacted by, it is addiction and mental health that's driving this. And so a lot of people that are just on the streets, they're in the corridors of people's buildings using open drug use, selling, purchasing drugs. And of course, when all that takes place, violence does erupt. And it's quite concerning for the area businesses and residents in the community.
How have things changed in your view? Why do you think there might be more safety concerns now in the West End? I know you've alluded already to drug use and social problems increasing, but is it? I guess I should ask how it's changed in terms of is it more visible or is it coming into the businesses or maybe in as you said around the schools maybe in a more visible way?
Oh, yes, it's definitely more invisible. We got to remember that we talk a lot about housing, but what we're not talking about is the addiction piece that we have to really focus on. Housing isn't going to solve the problems. People can still be housed, but they're still participating in this activity. And we do see that some people are housed, but yet they're congregating outside, still doing these activities. And I think there's been a real push to move people out of our downtown, and for us in our community, we do feel like we're still part of the downtown, especially that area around Portage and Sherbrooke and Sargent and Burnell. We still feel part of that downtown, but according to the city, our downtown really ends kind of at Burnell, Isabel and Balmoral. So for us, the big push to move people out of the downtown area, it just moves people along, and then we're not putting the right supports in place in these other outlying communities. Mine won't be the only one. We'll be seeing this issue in Elmwood and St. B and I think that Norwood Flats is having issues. So this just moves the problem along. So we're not really coming up with some solutions on how we're going to manage this while we deal with the housing shortage, while we deal with the addiction supports that are really needed to deal with what we're seeing on the streets.
You've called for the city to temporarily remove some bus shelters in the area. Why do you think that would help? And since it's temporary, why do you think that would help in the short term, I guess?
You know what? I do support the businesses on that. Like, I mean, we don't want to remove bus shelters, but it is a temporary measure that could help the congregation in and around that area, especially around Gordon Bell High School where kids are walking to school. And if people are not using the bus shelters for what they're supposed to be used for, there's no reason to have them, right? Of course, we want transit users to use them, but as fast as we move people on out of those shelters, they're just moving right back in. So the city cannot even keep up with the demand that we're seeing on that corner. So something to help with the businesses and the schools concern would just be temporary removing them until we come up with other solutions. And as governments, we do have to learn to pivot. This wouldn't be something I would have done a couple of years ago, but now it's just such an issue. We might have to look at addressing issues like this differently than maybe we have in the past.
It's interesting, Councillor Gilroy, because you're mentioning, other neighborhoods, right? You're talking about Norwood Flats, I think. We did a show in Osborne Village. Now this is 2 years on, and they have had changes there since then. But similar things. Businesses were saying we can't get staff. They were also saying that some of the folks that were on the street were kind of coming in, and some of them were violent, and they didn't have staff that could deal with that. I mean, so things are getting very real, on the ground, sort of people were nervous. And residents saying just more activity on the street and such. But they have seemed to have gone in a different direction. They're slowly, I think, changing. But there have been, I think, things like police patrols added. I think there's a unit right in Osborne Village. So what would work in your ward? Does some of the solutions from there translate?
Absolutely. We do need more police presence. We do need more patrols out on the streets, and we need governments to really act. I think a big concern that I have is we talk about the reduction of crime rates and safety issues we have in the city, but you got to remember that a large portion of my community, they just are not reporting. So that data is not correct. If people are not reporting, that doesn't mean things are safer or less violent. It just means that there's people maybe not reporting that data. So we also got to make sure that we're listening to when people are bringing things forward, that our governments are listening to them, and things in our area that could really help improve is getting rid of some of these vacant buildings that people with addictions are moving into. There's some that should be torn down. They should have been torn down yesterday after fire. It should be just gotten rid of. So there are certain things that we could be doing to make major improvements in these areas where we're seeing trouble. And a big one would be more policing presence, and not just those that are maybe in the car, but also those walking the beat like visible. We see in the downtown.
Yeah. And what about the supports that you're alluding to? Because one of the supports in the downtown area, though I know you were kind of outside of that, you're talking West End, even pushing into St. James a bit, but in the downtown area, I mean, the library changed in terms of their support for people and such. But are you talking about, could you use in the West End more really direct addiction support since that's been raised? Or what kinds of supports social supports are you looking for to be located in your community?
Yeah, well, you know what? Addiction supports has to be a big piece of the housing model, because we do know that people or some of them are being housed, right? But the behavior does not go away, and so that keeps them very hard to house. So addiction supports, and we also have to make sure that we're not putting people all into one community. We have to make sure that we, communities need to be diverse all over the city, and so we need to make sure that when we're placing people, they're not all in one community that are really struggling, because it just defeats the purpose of getting the addiction and help and support when those are really struggling, to be around others that are struggling too, right? So we need to look at and evaluate our addiction and mental health supports for sure.
We'll leave it there this morning. Councillor Gilroy, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
That is Cindy Gilroy with us live on Zoom, the City Councillor for Daniel McIntyre. If you want to weigh in, if you live in the area, we'd love to hear from you. You can always reach out to CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. And thanks for joining us this Tuesday, May 12th. Winds are already pretty strong out there, mostly cloudy. Winds are north at 46 kilometers per hour. That's the same actually in Brandon. We're at 7 degrees. Brandon's at 6. Thompson is with much lighter winds and currently sitting at 4 degrees. degrees this morning. It is time for morning sports at 7:25 with Scott Regehr, who's with us live. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
So let's start with football. There's plenty of new blood at Blommer's training camp, right?
Yeah, there is, with the team as active as anyone out there in free agency. Among the recruits, Winnipeg's brought in offensive lineman Jarrell Broxton, D lineman Jake Serezna, and prolific receiver Tim White. But it is another ball catcher that was on head coach Mike O'Shea's mind yesterday. That's Tommy Neild, who in 5 CFL seasons has already won 3 Grey Cups, 2 with Toronto and another with Saskatchewan. Here's O'Shea.
Seems like all that kid's done is win. Yeah, he's a good football player, highly intelligent, skilled, athletic. He's good for a team. He can do a lot of things that we like. And once again, in big games, he's seemed to play very, very well, too, right? Those are all good combinations.
Yeah, O'Shea's right about the big game play. In last year's Western Final, Neild caught the winning touchdown with just 11 seconds to play against the Lions. And then in the Grey Cup, he added 3 catches for 46 yards in a victory over Montreal. O'Shea's also right about Neild being intelligent. He was smart enough, after all, to pick a locker right beside Nick Dembski, one of the best Canadian receivers. No, one of the best receivers in the game. Training camp continues today.
Very nice. Nicely worded. Speaking of which, let's switch gears to cycling.
Hopefully finishing the last quarter of the lap here. Here they come. Alison Beveridge, Jasmine Glazier, Christy Lay, and Georgia Simmerling have won bronze for Canada.
The sound, Marcy, of Canada winning bronze at the Rio Olympics in team pursuit. It's the last podium finish the country managed in the discipline, and at least where Canada's women are concerned, could be the last for a while. Cycling Canada has announced it's withdrawing its women's team pursuit squad from the upcoming World Championships in Shanghai. It's chalking it up to budget constraints, and because recent results suggest they will not be medal contenders at the next Olympics in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Cycling Canada will support the equivalent men's program. Vancouver track cyclist Fiona Magendie is among those criticizing the decision, pointing out on social media that the Canadian women's team is where 100% of the Olympic medals have come from over the last 30 years, and that the women's team continues to outperform or at least match the men's. Clara Hughes, Canada's retired road cycling and speed skating Olympian, has offered her thoughts, saying she is deeply saddened and disappointed with what she calls a quote-unquote lame decision by Cycling Canada. And you can read more on this story this morning up on our website.
Boo. In hockey, it's going to be busy in Montreal tonight.
You think? With 2 big playoff games going on in that city. Yeah. The PWHL, the Victoire, Marcy, can eliminate the defending champs Minnesota tonight and book a spot in the final themselves in one fell swoop, something they might have done last night, but their game was postponed because of what the league is calling player safety concerns related to illness. Now, the PWHL didn't release any more details, but did say the players' symptoms are not consistent with hantavirus. So, with that as the backdrop, Marie-Philippe Poulin and company will take to the ice at 6 Central at Bell Place in Laval, about a half-an-hour drive away from the Bell Centre, where the Habs will try and take a commanding lead tonight in their series with Buffalo. Montreal has dominated the last couple of contests, and fans in that city are dreaming of a long cup run. One of those fans, Montreal's coach, Martin St. Louis, going a long way back.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up 20 minutes from here, and all my idols were the Canadians. And, I was able to stay up late in the playoff. I could watch the whole game. So I was happy when they were going far.
So now you're helping kids now be able to do that.
Well, I didn't say that.
Yeah, I've done lots of negotiating with my own kids around staying up for overtime. And with this early morning shift of ours, I have no interest in any more of that.
Yeah.
But it'll be fun to see the Habs win tonight.
All right. Thanks a lot. I like how you phrase that. It will be fun to watch them win tonight. Take care.
You bet.
That is Scott Regehr. Well, let's turn to serious matters coming up still ahead on Information Radio.
These stories will never not be shocking. I think that's the reality of it, is that, regardless of, how prevalent it may be for young people to be victimized online, when you hear that it's a 10-year-old, it is shocking and it's very serious.
That's the Canadian Centre for Child Protection reacting to an American man facing charges for luring a 10-year-old Manitoba girl into sending sexually explicit photos. We're going to talk more about it coming up in the next half hour of the show, what happened in this case, and where do we go from here to try to protect our kids. Right now, your news from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's 7:30. It's 7 degrees. We've had a little bit of rain. Nice fresh scent of rain in the air. A few showers ending this morning, then a mix of sun and clouds. That wind is going to switch directions from southeast to northwest, and it will gust to 60. Today's high, much like yesterday, 17. Downtown Winnipeg's Fort Garry Hotel is up for sale again. The 113-year-old hotel on Broadway was put for sale back in 2019, shortly before the pandemic, but was not sold. This new listing was announced by a brokerage and a real estate firm. The landmark hotel has 10 stories and 262 rooms. The Fort Garry is also a National Historic Site. Well, dozens turned out for a vigil in St. Anne for well-known chef and volunteer firefighter Cam Hewley. The 49-year-old died in hospital after an assault on May 2nd. People wearing shirts with the hashtag Justice for Cam gathered to share stories, light candles, and remember him. Jason Hewley is his brother.
I've had people from around the world reaching out that he's touched through his culinary world, and it's just been amazing the support that has been shown from people. And of course, I want to see justice done, and hoping for answers sooner and later.
Jason Hewley says he is still in shock and angry, but is putting his faith in the justice system the RCMP Homicide Unit is investigating. Manitoba Hydro says it cannot reveal the identities of companies hoping to build wind farms in this province. This, even as some of those companies identify themselves. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Manitoba Hydro is looking for Indigenous-led companies to build wind farms. The plan is to add 600 megawatts of generating capacity by 2035. The projects have to be at least 51% Indigenous-owned. Hydro has qualified a number of these companies, meaning they're eligible to submit proposals. But the Crown Corporation won't say how many companies are qualified, never mind who they are. This is happening while the Manitoba Métis Federation has gone public with its proposal to partner up with Renewable Energy Systems, a major British player. This partnership wants to build 30 windmills southeast of Riding Mountain National Park. The PC opposition urges Manitoba Hydro to be more transparent. The NDP government says it can't reveal more because it has to protect the integrity of the selection process. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
People in Manitoba's sports sector are welcoming a massive investment for Canadian athletics. The federal government has committed more than $500 million over the next 5 years to Canadian sport. Matt Barr at the Canadian Sports Centre Manitoba says it is overdue.
We're probably looking at a potential reduction in results in the coming years in sport. Budgets for national sport organizations have not really changed for the past 20 years, but inflation has gone up.
Ottawa says most of the money will go to national sports organizations. Increasing funding and federal government says has been largely unchanged since 2005. $50 million will also go to bringing sporting events to Canada and will be tied to legacy building projects that can benefit the grassroots level of sports. Federal NDP leader Avi Lewis was in Winnipeg last night hosting a town hall about Canada Post. The Crown Corporation is struggling financially and is scrapping door-to-door mail delivery for 4 million addresses across the country as part of restructuring. But Lewis says ending door-to-door delivery for so many people is an attack on communities.
The notion that the Postal Service loses money is absurd. We don't expect the firefighters to make money. We don't expect the police to make money. The Postal Service is a fundamental public service. It should be run for everyone's benefit.
Lewis was joined at the town hall by Winnipeg Centre MP Leah Gazan and officials with the Postal Workers Union. They are calling on the Liberal government to reverse Canada Post's plans. People in Flin Flon got their first look at the Northern City's new indoor pool complex yesterday. The facility isn't quite ready for cannonballs and lap swims yet, but construction is finished and the pool is filled with water. All that's needed now are more trained lifeguards. Flin Flon's recreation director is Caitlin Bailey.
There's always a little bit of nerves. You're excited about it, but you never know what everyone's going to think. And we've only really heard positive things. People are excited to see not only a facility, but this style of facility, the way that it was built, the accessibility. And so it was really exciting to see everyone excited to be in there.
Flin Flon hasn't had a pool since 2020 when the previous one shut down and was later demolished. Well, the province has just announced 12 Manitobans will soon receive Manitoba's highest honor. Chantal Kreviazuk among those getting the Order of Manitoba. Also on the list, Dr. Josh Reimer, who led the province's vaccine campaign during the pandemic and now is Canada's Chief Public Health Officer. Ash Moda of Mondetta Clothing, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber and Winnipegger Andrew Harris, and former Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister. They will all be invested at a ceremony in July at the Manitoba Legislative Building. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Some heavy hitters on that list.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
And that was not a pun, but I think I made an accidental pun because Andrew Harris was on the list. Woo! I never do them intentionally. I can't. Look at that, Abby. Regional forecast time with Abby. What's up?
Well, Marcy, we're looking at today bringing more like a mix of spring conditions with morning showers in the southern part of the province. That should give way to some sunshine as we get into the morning. While up north, we're still seeing cooler temperatures with lingering clouds. Current temperatures in the city, we're looking at a few showers ending this morning, followed by a mix of sun and clouds. We're seeing 7 degrees right now with windy conditions as northwest gusts picking up to about 60 kilometers. Morning temperatures really going to be hovering around this 7-8 degrees. We're aiming for a high of 17 later today, which is just right around the seasonal normal for this time of the year. In all the regions down south, in the Pembina Valley region from Morden towards Port Laprairie, we're seeing a few showers there. Current temperatures around 7, warming up to 19. Brandon and nearby 6 degrees, mostly cloudy, warming up to 19. We're noticing the wind gust there also. For the Parkland region, Dauphin towards the Roblin area. Sunny at this time, 5 degrees, you get to 20 today. In the Interlake region, Gimli sitting at 5 degrees. We're seeing a few showers there, a high of 16 in the forecast. Then we go up north. The Par Flin Flon, we're looking at 3 and 5 degrees, depending on where you are. A slim chance of thunderstorms and showers in the mix. We'll see a high around 16. Norway House, foggy at 4 degrees. We're looking at a high of 16. Thompson and Lynn Lake, we're seeing mostly cloudy conditions, transitioning into sunny skies. We will see your high around 10 degrees. We're looking at temperatures around 4 right now. Gillam, you're at 5. You get to 6. Tudula Lake at 1. You get to 4. While Churchill is at 2 degrees. And temperatures will be falling later in the day to -1 by the afternoon period. So the province is beginning to see some clear skies, but that would bring some gust of winds today for the city. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds, a high of 17. Current temperatures, we are sitting at 7 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's happening on the morning commute with May McKillop.
I'm keeping an eye on the construction along the Pembina overpass at Abinochi-Mikina. Abby was saying it's slowing things down quite a bit. So the northbound Pembina highway ramp onto westbound Abinochi-Mikina is closed approximately for 6 weeks starting yesterday. So keep an eye, maybe avoid the area if possible, and give me a call about anything else that you're seeing along your commute. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, we've been weighing in on Manitoba Day and what we love about the province, or maybe what you notice or why you live here. And so it's your turn, May. What do you love?
Well, I have to say, Abby took mine.
The sky?
No, the bison.
Oh.
I was in Minnedosa last week, and they have a couple new bison calves. And it's such an interesting little
cute
town.
When they're babies.
Well, yeah, and it's an interesting little town where there's an enclosure right in the town there, right along a creek that comes off the lake. So maybe I'll Go north of Bison in Minnedosa, and I'll say the lake there.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, all the lakes across the province.
It's very picturesque, our province, right?
It really is.
You notice that you can get out and about. We're about to have that season where we're driving and look at the sky, see the prairie
Absolutely.
bison. Yeah.
I love like a back road drive across the highways and then seeing the prairie sky sunset.
All good things. So you tell us, it's Manitoba Day. What do you love? 788-3205. Well, you have to have a little bit of bright and beauty because a lot of the news is not that. And next on the show, we have a bit of a warning. We're about to talk about a very serious topic, and some of the details in our next story you might find disturbing. A 32-year-old man from Ohio, you might have heard in the news, is accused of exploiting a 10-year-old girl from Manitoba. RCMP say the 10-year-old girl had been lured into sending explicit images and videos of herself to a person she thought was a teenage boy. Court documents reviewed by CBC show the girl was approached on Snapchat. The suspect has been arrested and remains in custody in Ohio. And yesterday on CBC, Up to Speed guest host Chloe Friesen spoke with Lindsay Lobb, who's the Director of Operations of Support Services at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection.
Well, and I think, this is the crux of the issue, is that we have apps that are very, very accessible to children that, are too young to use them by virtue of the app's own terms of use. And I think that's what's concerning, is that they can be so easily accessed. And these are very popular social media platforms. So, through the tip line, we are seeing reports related not only to apps like Snapchat, but also Instagram and TikTok, apps that are marketed at young people and, seek to entice them to be on them.
Lindsay Lobb, as I mentioned, Director of Operations and Support Services at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. So how do you talk to your kids about this issue, and is there a way that we can prevent things like this from happening? Joanne Unger is a clinical psychologist. She is here to react and tell us about this. Good morning.
Good morning.
Tough one, obviously, all too common. This victim's 10 years old. What kind of trauma can that have on the child, like after this happens?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the child in terms of the meaning they make of what's happened. And so certainly it can be very, very upsetting, very distressing to think that the person that you're engaging with is not the person you think they were. And that your pictures of yourself are vulnerable. Very vulnerable pictures and explicit pictures of yourself are now in the hands of someone you can't trust. So that can be very scary.
And what kind of resources down the line might be needed to help, victims recover from something like this? Or I guess to regain some trust in the world, because you're so young and you've had that fundamental trust broken in so many different ways.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of ways that we can come through something like this. I think sometimes grown-ups struggle a little bit more with this kind of situation than children do. However, kids, it depends on their personality. It depends on their situation. It depends the meaning that they're making of it. And so having supportive adults, whether that's people in their family or their community or a therapist, working with them to shift how they think about the situation and how they think about the world. It sometimes takes some work. And for some kids, it doesn't take a lot of work.
How do you have thoughts about how to talk to kids or teach kids about the dangers of sending any kind of images of yourself to someone online?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we need to be talking to kids about really, really early. And I think it's something us as parents need to be, and caregivers need to be thinking about when we're allowing access to devices or apps, that we're having these conversations ahead of time. I think sometimes it's really tempting because kids are so tech savvy and sometimes know more about how our phones and our devices work than we do because their brains are young and they're thinking and they're motivated to learn about these things. We forget that they may not understand the depth of how these things work. And that's where they need adult brains to come alongside them and say things like, photos are permanent. You don't know where they're going to go once they leave your device and are online. So a lot of teaching is really needed at school and at home around how these apps and the online world really works, as opposed to how they feel and experience it works just on their screen.
This is a tough one because you want to protect the kids, but I wonder whether or not, parents, to open a conversation with your kids, Do you tell them about a case like this? Like, how careful do you have to be about that?
It really depends on the kid and the age of the kid in terms of their personality and their temperament. Some parents may be really tempted to use this as a teaching strategy, and it can be useful for that, right? To teach some kids about what can happen. But you want to be sensitive to the temperament of your kids, and if they're anxiety prone, right, being a little bit careful about that. I think the temptation for some parents might be, see, I told you so, as an opener around some conversations that they have. And that's not usually very helpful, as we all know when we're on the receiving end of that. But being very curious about what kids are thinking and feeling about the situation, starting there. And seeing what they know and being curious about that first before necessarily launching into a conversation.
According to court documents, this girl used her grandmother's cell phone. She was playing games. She created a Snapchat account. She provided a false age. Obviously, the Premier has announced now that Manitoba is looking at banning kids under 16 from using social media and AI chatbots. I wonder whether or not, from your perspective, you're willing to weigh in on what you think of that.
Yeah, I think families need support because this situation is bigger than what parents can do, and we need some regulation on these tech companies, and we need to support parents in that way. I think we also need to teach kids how to use social media, how to use devices and be online in a safe way. So I am certainly in favor of a 14 and under ban of social media. And then, or under 14, 15, 16, we should be teaching them and supervising them. I know that's hard for some families to do. It may not be realistic, and that's where partnering maybe with schools to do that teaching and that education. But really responsibility, I believe, lies with the tech companies. And just as your previous guest said, we need to figure out how to have some regulation here so that they're held responsible for keeping kids safe online, particularly if they're marketing to them.
Why 14, 15, 16 to teach them? Because are they going to go there anyway? Like, is 16 a little bit too late?
Yeah. So 16, we can drive a car and we can make our own medical decisions. I think, I think, you guys have had some really good stories about what's happening in Australia and kids getting around it already. And I think
they found all the ways.
They found all the ways. So just like driving, we don't just hand them a set of keys when they're 16 and say, go drive a car. Right. We give them lessons.
There's practice years.
We have graduated licensing. Right. So this is a complex skill that need complex time to learn. And so with a ban, you kind of have an all or nothing approach. And so I really think we need a much more nuanced way. And I really want to iterate that the responsibility does lie in us as a society to support parents to do this. And it's not quite fair that it's all on parents to try to figure this out and manage it. And we need to find ways to support them.
We should probably all take that course from 14 to 16 about how to use it with the younger people, I think. As you were saying, they're more savvy then.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. All right, Joanne Unger, thank you very much for weighing in.
Thanks for having me.
Joanne Unger, clinical psychologist. If you want to read more about what happened in this terrible case with this little girl, we have been reporting on it and around the safety pieces, so you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
It really feels like you're trying to throw a plate of spaghetti on the wall and hoping something sticks.
The youth labor market is behaving as if the overall economy isn't just in recession, but is in a severe recession.
At the time, I'm 16, 17 years old. I'm not supposed to be giving my life to a 9-to-5 yet.
Young people don't always know how to interpret failure or rejection.
Struggling to get any job.
This week on Information Radio, it's The Young and the Jobless, a new series all about youth unemployment.
Still ahead on that series tomorrow, looking at youth unemployment. Who is to blame for the highest youth unemployment rate in 32 years since 1994? We're going to hear from an economic analyst tomorrow who thinks that he has the answer, and he's actually laying this at the feet of the federal government and at policies that have happened over the years that are affecting youth. So that'll be an interesting conversation. That's tomorrow as our series continues here on Information Radio. It is now 11 minutes to 8 o'clock on CBC. Thanks so much for joining us. 7 degrees degrees in Winnipeg and winds are north at 46. It's going to be a windy day and a high of 17 today in the city. Well, May happens to be Brain Tumor Awareness Month, but yesterday we got quite a story with a Winnipeg man who was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a brain tumor. After exhausting several treatment options, Chico Colissimo was told that he had 6 months to live, and his wife found Optune Geo, which would improve his life and time during those months. This is a medical device. It slows down the growth of tumors. It has, in his case, it shrunk it. Now, this is what he and his wife, Shauna Colissimo, told us on Information Radio about the impact.
Like, I go work and I tinker in the garage. I was fixing a fence. I was rebuilding the garage that we're doing. Working on a car.
How debilitated were you before you did that?
I was in November, honey?
Between October and November was terrible.
I was in a wheelchair.
He was
okay
on a couch. He couldn't walk and if he did get up and walk, he passed out. So we had to be very careful. He couldn't tell me what he wanted for breakfast.
This is a device that goes on the back of Chico's head, and it goes down to a battery pack of sorts, and then it has electrical pulses that, this is the simple way of explaining it, that help in the treatment of the tumors and shrinking of the tumors. It does cost, though, nearly $30,000 a month. Now, that cost is not covered in Manitoba. This family has had their friends and family come forward to help them with that, but they won't say that they want to help future patients. It has, however, been approved, Optune Geo, by Health Canada since 2022. And in February, British Columbia decided they would cover the cost of the treatment. So next on the show, we reached out to Nicole Farrell. She's the CEO of Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada to weigh in. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. So what is your position from Brain Tumor Canada on Optune Geo?
Oh, Optune Geo. No, Chico's story is incredibly powerful, especially in a disease like glioblastoma, where there's been so few treatments over the past 2 decades. And so Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada, our position is that if this is a device that patients are eligible for, we want to ensure that patients have access to it regardless of where they live.
So tell me a little bit about, obviously you said Canada, the province of Manitoba should consider covering the treatment, which they are. They're doing a review right now. But I understand it can be quite complicated reviewing this, and not everyone is eligible, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, we've been following this for several years now as an organization. I mean, our role is to advocate for patients, and in particular, advocate that they get timely access to treatments, from pharmacological treatments or medical device treatments. And this one in particular is quite difficult because one of the challenges is that the Canadian system is largely designed around pharmaceuticals and not necessarily medical devices like Optune Geo. And so that's really what slows down the approval pathway process. And unfortunately for patients who have a rare disease like a glioblastoma, they don't have the luxury of time to wait for the system to catch up.
So it's not necessarily that this technological device medically is the challenge in terms of the review process. It's a bigger picture of saying we kind of understand how to review pills, pharmaceuticals, but not necessarily tech. That's going to be a challenge in the future.
It will be. Yeah, as you mentioned, this was approved by Health Canada back in 2022. They recommended reimbursement with specific conditions. I think that they acknowledged that, eligibility is going to vary patient to patient based on the location of the tumor, the progression of the disease, functional status, and other considerations. So it's a really layered approach to determine which patients are going to benefit from this treatment, and that's something that they need to review with their healthcare providers. But yeah.
This is not covered in Ontario either, for example. Are you hearing anything about the demand for the device there or in other provinces?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we routinely get calls from patients or families from across Canada looking for access to evidence-informed treatment options, including Optune Geo, both patients and clinicians. And again, it's mostly because there's been so few advancements in glioblastoma care. But there's also recognition, I think, across provinces that it's a complex policy and implementation process. And so there's a lot of reviews that take place from cost, infrastructure, patient support, and long-term funding considerations.
What do you know, if anything, because obviously data is hard to come by, I understand, because we were talking about that yesterday, but about how effective the device has been for others, like where the push is coming from? Because we heard this one Manitoba man's story, but are there other success stories? Is that why people or provinces are really, stepping forward to say, what about this?
Well, I think if you yourself have been diagnosed with a glioblastoma, or your family has, you know that the prognosis is not great. It's one of the most aggressive tumors, and with a poor prognosis. And so patients and families are desperate for any hope that they can get. And so they hear about Optune device and absolutely are interested in looking at that. But our role as a patient advocate, we also just want to be mindful that some patients might benefit more than others. I mean, Chico's story is incredibly powerful, and it's wonderful, his outcome. But we just want to be cautious that might not be the same for all patients. It might vary. Some patients, again, Optune, I believe, one of the eligibility criteria is newly diagnosed after resection, chemotherapy, radiation therapy. And the benefit depends also on where the tumor is located inside of the brain.
Got it.
And so depending on each individual patient, they might not be eligible for it.
I mentioned that data is hard to come by, and unfortunately, sometimes that's because these tumors, as we understood in our research for Chico's story, can be so aggressive that sometimes patients aren't with us long enough to be studied even. But why is having data important as we work towards better systems?
Oh, it's incredibly important for healthcare, for research, for outcomes. One of the major challenges in Canada is that our research, our data, is not harmonized across provinces. And so brain tumors are relatively rare. They're diverse in terms of their structure and their molecular classification. And so, a lot of the provinces have incomplete data. They don't have full classification of the non-malignant tumor types. So it makes it difficult for researchers to collaborate and to find adequate sample sizes to do their research studies.
Thank you very much for weighing in as we continue to learn even more about this. Appreciate your time today on CBC.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Live on Zoom with us this morning, the CEO of Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada. That was Nicole Farrell. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock now on CBC's Information Radio. Stay with us after 8 o'clock, live in studio, the new leader of the federal NDP, who is in Winnipeg. Avi Lewis will be here. We'll talk to him about why he's in the city, what he's doing to boost support for the federal NDP. We can tell you why he's been in the city. It's been in the news this morning. He's here to talk about Canada Post. He was in meetings yesterday. So we'll ask more about that, but also for his vision for a party that is not an official party. So stay tuned. At the federal level, work to do for them. It is 7 degrees in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy in the city, a high of 17 today. We are going to be very windy. Winds will be southeast, gusting up to 60 kilometers per hour this morning. Another excuse if you haven't yet raked. If you're having problems on the morning commute, call us, please. May McKillop will pick it up on the commuter line today. The number is 788-3093. With more local news updates and headlines on developing stories, Heather Wells is back ahead of national news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, dozens gathered in St. Anne last night for a vigil for Cam Hewley. The 49-year-old was a well-known chef and volunteer firefighter in the community. He died earlier this month in hospital after an assault. His brother Jason says it's hard to believe he is gone. At last word, RCMP had not made any arrests. The province has announced 12 new, soon-to-be members of the Order of Manitoba. On that list, opera singer Tracy Dahl, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber Andrew Harris, Elder Billy Shibler, who was the former Children's Advocate of Manitoba, and former Premier Brian Pallister. They will all be invested at a ceremony in July. We'll have the rest of the list coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Still time to weigh in on why you love Manitoba on this May 12th. 788-3205. World Report is next on 89.3. Stay with us.
Q. Arlo Parks has been making music since she was a teenager. And then in her 20s, she realized she never let herself just be, like kind of have the fun you're supposed to have at her age. She'll tell you what finally doing that looked like and how it led to her brilliant new record.
It's the right place at the wrong time.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
If you have a teenager in your life, chances are they have a story to tell about vaping in the washroom at their school. Some kids aren't even using the bathroom at school because so many kids are in there vaping. We'll talk about how high school administrators are redesigning the washrooms to fight the addiction, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. The leaders of the world's largest economies will soon be face-to-face. U.S. President Donald Trump is heading to Beijing today for a summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Trump has been focused on domestic issues as well as the war in Iran, but that changes this week as he tries to build bridges after escalating trade tensions. Nick Harper joins me from Washington. Nick, what do we know about this trip?
Martina, Donald Trump is heading to Beijing really with a laundry list of issues to discuss. Trade, of course, central to all of this. Remember, there is that tariff truce still underway after both countries imposed levies in excess of 100% on others' goods. And backing up that idea that trade is so key to this visit, the CEOs of some of the biggest US companies, Apple, Boeing, Tesla, Meta, they're also taking part in this trip. There's even some speculation here in the US that Donald Trump is looking for a mega deal, wanting Xi Jinping to invest about $1 trillion in the United States to build factories. The US is also looking for China to buy more agricultural products, specifically soybeans, and more US energy. And the US wants China to loosen restrictions on exports of Chinese rare earth materials. And in return, with AI competition being central to this trip as well, Beijing wants the US to ease export curbs that Washington has put in place on some of those advanced semiconductors.
Well, Nick, as we all know, China-US relations are strained. How could issues like the war in Iran affect this visit?
Well, you know, President Trump was hoping to go into this really from a position of strength, hoping to have the Iran war wrapped up and hoping to play hardball with Xi on trade, and that's just not the case. Iran could completely overshadow this visit. The US wants China to use its influence to convince Iran to make a deal. Now, that is in theory in China's interest. It buys a lot of oil from Iran, but going on bended knee to Beijing, asking for diplomatic help from Xi Jinping, that's not the position that Donald Trump wanted to be in.
That is Nick Harper in Washington. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome.
The World Health Organization says the hantavirus outbreak related to a Dutch cruise ship appears to be contained. There are now 11 reported cases. 9 are confirmed, 2 are suspected. The head of the WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, says he's optimistic, but cautious.
At the moment, there is no sign that we are seeing the start of a larger outbreak. But of course, the situation could change. And given the long incubation period of the virus, it's possible we might see more cases in the coming weeks.
There are no suspected or confirmed hantavirus cases here in Canada, but 9 people with links to the cruise ship are now in isolation in BC, Alberta, and Ontario. An out-of-control wildfire is burning in north-central Alberta, forcing dozens of people to flee their homes. The fire is near Whitecourt. That's about 180 kilometers northwest of Edmonton. As Katie Teeling reports, residents are eager for more information.
It's affecting a lot of, my home, my neighbors, my community, and the fire doesn't stop at community borders, so it doesn't take long for things to get out of hand.
Cage Trigg has lived in Woodlands County his whole life. When an evacuation order was issued, Trigg only had time to grab his dog and a few important documents. Now, he's anxiously waiting to see if the wildfire will impact his home.
To think that you might lose it all, well, you can just pray, right?
Evacuees are being sent to nearby Whitecourt, just 3.5 kilometers northwest of the fire. As of late Monday evening, nearly 100 residents had registered at the town's reception center. Dave Cush is the Reeve of Woodlands County. He expects that number to increase in the coming days.
There are a lot of trees in that area. Nothing's greened up. You still have a lot of the underbrush and the deadfall around the area. It just went up like a tinderbox.
Cush adds that the wildfire exploded in size from 1 hectare to at least 55 hectares. driven by high winds and dry weather, and it's still growing. The extent of the damage from the wildfire is unclear. Alberta Wildfire says night vision-equipped helicopters were deployed, and an update is expected later this morning. Katie Teeling, CBC News, Edmonton.
An executive order from the U.S. president appears to be affecting health care for some students at a Canadian university. A trans rights group says McGill's Student Health Clinic is no longer providing hormone replacement therapy to students from the United States. Steve Rukavina explains.
Emma Gimbert is with the Montreal Trans Patient Union, a group that advocates for trans health care. The group meets regularly with doctors from McGill's Student Health Clinic, known as the Student Wellness Hub. Gimbert says doctors from the hub told her about the new policy at a meeting in March, saying based on legal advice, they would no longer provide HRT to American students under age 19. Gimbert says the doctors referred specifically to an executive order issued by Donald Trump that imposes consequences on doctors who provide gender-affirming care to minors. The executive order only applies to U.S. doctors, but Gimbert says doctors from McGill's clinic were worried they could face legal action or trouble at the border if they violated Trump's order.
It's definitely upsetting because this is something that sets a dangerous precedent.
Gimbert says McGill shouldn't be letting Donald Trump dictate healthcare policy on its campus. In a statement, McGill says it offers gender-affirming care to students, including international students. But the university refused to clarify its policy for U.S. students under 19. Gimbert says McGill needs to be more transparent.
We know that this is something that they're aware about. It's just not something that they're publicly talking about.
McGill referred CBC to the Canadian Medical Protective Association, a group that offers legal advice to doctors at the Wellness Hub. That group says its advice to doctors is confidential. Steve Rukavina, CBC News, Montreal.
The United Nations says armed drones are the leading cause of death among civilians in Sudan's civil war. Since the start of this year, close to 900 people have been killed. That, along with a different UN report earlier this month highlighting another deadly threat. Landmines are also killing displaced people trying to return home. Naba Muhyiddin has that story.
Hidden dangers are claiming lives across Sudan. As families return to areas still littered with landmines and unexploded ordnance, the United Nations says dozens of people have been injured, many of them children. In Khartoum and other former front lines, the ground itself has become a threat. For many displaced people like Muna Ahmed, returning home is no longer just about rebuilding, but about survival.
I want to go back, but I'm afraid for my children. They play outside, and you don't know what's under the ground. One step can change everything.
Clearance teams are working to remove explosives, but the scale of contamination is vast, and resources are limited. Officials say thousands of devices have been found, yet many more remain hidden. Athari An-Naim is a demining officer.
We're working daily to clear affected areas and make them safe again, but it takes time, and we urge civilians to wait until zones are declared safe before returning.
The government and aid groups hope clearance efforts will help restore confidence and encourage safe returns, but for now, fear remains buried just beneath the surface. Naba Muhyiddin for CBC News, Port Sudan.
Britain's Prime Minister is telling his cabinet he will get on with governing. Calls are growing within Keir Starmer's Labour Party for him to resign. Last week, the party was pummeled in local elections across the UK. Close to 20% of his caucus colleagues are urging him to quit. However, other members are backing Starmer. Darren Jones is a senior cabinet minister.
The Prime Minister is Keir Starmer. That's what people elected at the last general election. And look, we can play fantasy politics as much as you like, but I just think it's right to recognise that what the public care about is the future of our country, and that is what the government is getting on with delivering.
2 ministers have resigned from Starmer's cabinet in protest. The Eurovision Song Contest is back.
Steht vor dem Club, schon gespannt.
It's campy, sometimes cringy, always a good source for a power ballad. And tonight, the world's biggest song contest kicks off in Vienna. But the mood is somewhat subdued. Spain, the Netherlands, Ireland, Slovenia, and Iceland are all boycotting. Some are even refusing to broadcast it. They say just as Russia was banned from Eurovision after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Israel should be banned for its bombardment of Gaza following the October 7th Hamas attacks. This is this year's entry from the host country, Austria. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Well, in case you're wondering, Canada's not in Eurovision. It was mentioned in the Fed budget last year, remember? We're going to explore being in the contest. It's not happening this year, at least. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. And you are listening to CBC's Information Radio, the morning show here on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This half hour on the program, the new leader of the federal NDP is in Winnipeg. We're going to talk to Avi Lewis about how he's hoping to boost support for his federal party, which is struggling. In addition, what he thinks about Canada Post last night, as you've been hearing in the news. That is what he brought him here to Winnipeg. He was there talking about Canada Post. So the Crown Corporation, as you know, is struggling financially, and we'll find out more about what the way forward is, according to the new leader of the NDP. He's in studio with us live. Stay here. First, we have other headlines on this Tuesday, May 12th, with Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, dozens turned out for a vigil in St. Anne last night for well-known chef and volunteer firefighter Cam Hewley. The 49-year-old died in hospital after an assault May 2nd. People wearing shirts with the hashtag Justice for Cam gathered to tell stories, light candles, and remember him. We're going to hear from his brother coming up. And Manitoba Hydro says it cannot reveal the identities of companies hoping to build wind farms in this province. Hydro is looking for Indigenous-led companies to build those wind farms. Meanwhile, the Manitoba Métis Federation has gone public with its proposal to partner with a major British company to build 30 windmills southeast of Riding Mountain National Park. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on in this weather forecast. Abby, bit of a wet start, I guess. Still, it's damp out there.
Yeah, still damp out there. Today brings more like a mix of spring conditions with morning showers, though that should give way to some sunshine later, while the northern part of the province still remains cooler with lingering clouds and some fog patches here and there. Forecast for the city and nearby. We're looking at a start of mostly cloudy skies. That should clear as we get into the morning. This will be followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Current temperatures, we're tracking 8 degrees at the Forks and 7 at the airport with windy conditions coming from the northwest. Our morning temperatures really going to stay around this 8 degrees, 7 degrees for most of the morning. We're aiming for a high of 17 later, which is right around our seasonal for the day. We might touch 18 if the sun kind of warms things up more for us later in the day, so I'm hopeful for that, but I'm saying 17 here. I'm just hopeful for 18 degrees.
Abby
later.
Finally has a nice forecast to share.
Yes, Marcy.
You know what I forgot to share with you?
Oh, bring it on.
And I think you'll actually like this. So someone wrote to me, it was a day when you actually had a blizzard to talk about. Mm-hmm. Do you remember we had in the spring and we were all like, oh, what are you talking about? But they actually wrote to me and they said, well, at least it's Abby delivering this with his beautiful way of speaking. And obviously you have your gorgeous Nigerian accent rolling. They said, when Abby says blizzard, it still sometimes makes me feel better. So...
Oh, okay. Well, no blizzard for now. No blizzard, no Colorado lows, no Alberta Clippers. We're done.
Abby was nailing it this morning in weather too, the way he was describing stuff. He said we're shaking off a damp start, and that's exactly what we're doing. So yeah, we're heading for nicer temperatures. Let's go to May McKillop now. She's in with our morning commute deets. What's up?
Name of the game is construction, of course. So we're watching construction along Pembina Overpass at Abenochi-Mikina. The northbound and southbound Pembina highway traffic has been has been moved to the southbound side of the bridge. So some lanes are closed along that overpass, and that's slowing things down quite a bit. As well, the northbound Pembina Highway ramp onto westbound Abenochi-Mikina is closed. That started yesterday and is running for approximately 6 weeks. So if you're driving your morning commute, you may want to avoid that area. Anything else going on? We got about 40 minutes left in the show to pass that message along. The number to call 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned earlier this year, the NDP elected a brand new leader at the federal level before entering the political sphere. Avi Lewis was a journalist, you might know, including at CBC, and a documentary filmmaker, but he's hoping to bring new life to a party that has been in decline at the federal level. Losing 17 of 24 seats in the last election, Leah Gazan holds the only NDP seat here in Manitoba. Avi Lewis is visiting Manitoba and is in studio with us right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
It is a pleasure to be here. Back in Winnipeg only 6 weeks after the convention, but that changed my life.
Yeah, made you leader. Let's talk about last night. It's in the news this morning, Town Hall on Canada Post, about cutting door-to-door service. Your party's calling on the Carney government to actually reverse this. Why do you feel that? Why do you feel the cut should be reversed?
I mean, Canada Post is one of our most cherished public services. There was a really emotional moment last night, Marcy, during the town hall when a letter carrier spoke in tears about her route, about her neighborhood, about how there are seniors on her route that she's the only person that they see in a day. The Postal Service is one of those incredible ties that bind. It actually connects our communities. And I think we're losing that in modern life. People feel isolated. We're all disappearing into our devices and being pitted against each other in polarized politics. And the Canada Post is just a fundamental connector. It could be so much more. We've shoved it so far into the market mindset that we expect this fundamental public service to make a profit, which I just think is inappropriate. We don't expect the police service or the fire service to make a profit. It's a fundamental service that should serve Canadians.
Obviously, the pushback is, the police and the fire service are there for a protection reason. Canada Post is not necessarily mandated to, and I'm going to say this, and I don't mean that I'm without sentiment here. I understand the importance of people connecting.
Yeah.
But they're not there to do that, to provide that sort of outreach to people or connection with seniors if they're vulnerable or lonely necessarily. They are there to deliver. Packages,
sure.
Mail.
So there's more packages than ever.
But they're losing $10 million a day. So what can they do if you want to keep the door-to-door and get better at the packaging?
Well, they bought Purolator in the 90s, and they've used it during legal strikes to offload onto private service and I don't know if you've gone to a Purolator to pick up a package during a Canada Post strike, but you see one underpaid, stressed out young ununionized person dealing with 20 or 30 residents who are all impatient to get their mail. That's the future. Canada Post has we don't ask questions about the management of Canada Post, but if you look at the losses that they declare and the profits that Purolator makes, package delivery is massively up as letter volume is down. And we could have a 21st century post office in Canada if we invested in it properly with Canadian-made electric delivery vans, like the New Flyer bus plant right here in Manitoba makes electric buses with $13.5 billion of back orders across the country. There is a way to think about our public services as a source of growth, of unionized jobs, of connecting our communities. And Canada Post has been shoved into this privatization path where the service has been, in our view, ruined over years and diminished to pave the way for more and more privatization. And we need parcels delivered in our economy today. Canada Post could and should be doing it, but we need a fundamental rethink of what the service is for.
Let's talk about the scheme of things politically here. So the previous Prime Minister and Liberal leader lean more left, obviously. Some say Prime Minister Carney tends to lean a bit more right in his policies, at least with some of the analysis. Does it give the NDP more breathing rooms in terms of how this party appeals to voters, do you think?
I do think that Prime Minister Carney has sent a lot of mixed signals and has certainly moved fast on certain things. I think this last week's revelations about, the C5 new legislation for major projects and speeding them up and approval, sidelining Indigenous consultation, sidelining environmental review to speed up major projects. We now have a new iteration of it that is twice as fast, that even the former
They still
Liberal
say there's
minister,
some protections. We were talking about it this morning, but you're saying
they're talking
not
about
enough.
pre-approving projects, Marcy.
They
Even
are,
Stephen
yep.
Guilbeault, a former cabinet minister, said essentially that this is
Not happy.
more extreme than what Stephen Harper did more than a decade ago. And there's this rush to build big things, which we do need to build big things.
Yeah, that's the push, right? Aren't we in a
Sure.
specific moment globally where maybe there needs to be a different push because we have to build in Canada faster?
Sure. And what are we building? And I think there's a lot of folks who are just hear about this MOU with Alberta. It's all about another pipeline. People forget that we paid $35 billion or more to buy the oil industry a pipeline, TMX, just a few years ago, and yet they need another one. There's clearly no private proponent for it. And now we have a completely transformed, eviscerating environmental protections, pre-approving projects so that permitting and environmental assessment happen at the same time for projects the cabinet is going to say, well, we're doing this, so it's only a question of figuring out where we're going to blast it through. I mean, this is not protecting processes that Canadians rely on to be sure that these projects are really done in the national interest.
What are your ongoing conversations going to be like with our premier around some of this? Because he's been vocal, obviously, in efforts to expand the Port of Churchill in Manitoba as a new way to ship natural resources from Western Canada. But to do that, we have to be able to ship natural gas. And the timeline we're now hearing as of April is like in 4 years we have to do this. So we now are looking at pipelines in Manitoba in a different way. So what does that conversation look like?
Well, the Premier and I agree on a lot of things. And as he said when I was elected, we don't have to agree on every little thing in order to do big things together. So we've worked together on surveillance pricing, which Manitoba has led on, and the NDP provincially and federally has made a big splash about. And I was just knocking doors in Elmwood, Transcona yesterday in the rain, and neighbors are really responding to this idea that we're being spied on by big corporations who are jacking up prices individually. When it comes to fossil fuels, the federal NDP has a different vision. What we are seeing from this illegal, reprehensible attack on Iran by the United States and Israel is a global crisis, which is an energy crisis unlike any we've ever seen before. And the countries of the world are moving rapidly beyond fossil fuels. France has now cut off all new gas heating for new home builds. In Europe, EV demand is up 50% in the last year. Last year on planet Earth, 99% of new electricity demand was satisfied by solar and wind.
So
and
you're
fossil
saying
fuels for electricity declined. The world is moving on. Canada's doubling down on fossil fuels. There are better paths that do not sacrifice the fates of fossil fuel workers and their families, but we need other industries. And we just are so out-lobbied here in Canada by the fossil fuel industry that we're doubling down on last century's technology.
What are you going to do about your seat counts? I mean, NDP, you said you're knocking on doors.
We're going to win more seats, Marcy. That's what you do with seat counts.
You went from having 3 in Manitoba to having 1 now across the country. Obviously, we reiterated the numbers. How can you rebuild the party here? Where do you start in Manitoba?
Well, Elmwood Transcona was a really was a refreshing and exciting experience yesterday, knocking on doors with a whole bunch of volunteers who are local. We have a lot of excitement in the party from the leadership race. On our campaign, we doubled down on local organizing. We had dozens of local chapters across the country. And it's not showing up in the polls yet, but we're good at the ground game, talking to neighbors about the everyday emergency of trying to get by in this country, the cost of living crisis, and our focus coming out the gate on surveillance pricing, on a public option for groceries, on public options for cell phones and other essential goods and services that we need in Canada that are just too expensive, is getting us incredible reaction at the doorstep. And that's where we're going to come back.
You mentioned groceries, public option for groceries. What role could that play in Manitoba? We've been hearing a lot from the Premier and this government, NDP government provincially right now about what they're looking at in terms of geographically where competitors can set up so people have more options. They're trying to loosen and challenge those rules. But what about public grocery stores here? What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, the Manitoba government has led on, price caps for milk, which is fantastic, and looking at these covenants that our big problem is we've got 5 big grocery chains that control 80% of the market. They price fix on bread for 20 years, for heaven's sake. They overcharge for underweight meat. Remember this CBC Marketplace revelation a year ago? And then a year later, it turns out they're still doing the same thing. Galen Weston is worth $20 billion. We are being gouged at the grocery store. I met a young mom with 2 kids, lost her partner a few years ago, trying to pay for groceries. She said she pays $300 for groceries that used to cost her less than $200. It's a crisis, and we are proposing a network of publicly run grocery stores, like we have liquor stores and cannabis stores in Canada, like we have public insurance and public telephone companies, an actual public option that would save Canadians 30 to 45% at the grocery checkout and cost us nationally about $300 million a year. 0.5% of our current defense budget. We believe we've got to think outside the box and solve this crisis directly.
Thank you very much for being in studio with us on CBC today. Nice to meet you in person, and I appreciate you being here.
What a pleasure. Thanks, Marcy.
So live on CBC with us in studio, a federal NDP leader, Avi Lewis, who has been in town. Yesterday was at a Canada Post meeting, and what happened there is part of our news run today. You can check out any news on anytime at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Music now from Chantal Kreviazuk. It was announced this morning she's one of the 12 on Manitoba Day who will receive the Order of Manitoba.
Something in your eyes makes me want to lose myself. Makes me want to lose myself in your arms. There's something in your voice makes my heart beat fast. Hope this feeling lasts the rest of my life. If you knew how lonely my life has been, and how long I've been so alone. And if you knew how I wanted someone to come along and change my life the way you've done. It feels like home to me. It feels like home to me. It feels like I'm all the way back where I come from. It feels like home to me. It feels like home to me. It feels like I'm all the way back where I belong. A window breaks down a long dark street, and a siren wails in the night. But I'm alright, 'cause I have you here with me, and I can almost see through the dark there is light. Well, if you knew how much this moment means to me, and how long I've waited for your touch. And if you knew how happy you are making me, I never thought that I'd love anyone so much. It feels like home to me. It feels like home to me. It feels like I'm all the way back where I come from.
Well, Chantal Kreviazuk's going to be coming home to receive the Order of Manitoba. She's one of 12 on the list today. We'll hear the full list of recipients coming up on your 8:30 news. Today is Manitoba Day. Man, if you ever see her perform live, you just sort of stop. I did anyway. Like, you know, Marjorie Dawes is in studio host of Radio Noon. Like, she's such a talent. When you hear her sing, it's just like effortless and yet so powerful.
Her voice, right?
Yeah. You are here to tell us about the call-in.
Yes. So today, obviously, in light of the cruise ship where there was a hantavirus outbreak, the MV Hondias, we're asking you if anything that has happened has changed your mind about getting on a cruise. Cruises, very popular vacations. Hearing a little bit of mixed reaction from some of the people in my circle. Some people saying, it's not going to change my mind. Some people saying, well, I don't know, I'm a little bit more cautious now. I'm not sure. But we want your take. We're going to have a tourism expert and a virologist join us on our call-in starting at 12:15 this afternoon. Of course, if you want to leave a voicemail, you can call us at 204-788-3797.
Interesting guests. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy.
Also, thanks to the folks that were part of our program this morning. So with items in the show today, associate producers Emily Enns and Sophia Peralta Barone, as well as our Studio 15 crew. Woo! I'm waving at them on the other side of the glass. They are May McKillop, Abby Adeyemi, and Darren Marash, as well as our producers, Leif Larson, the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, and Nellie Gonzalez, who's a producer in our CA unit. It's time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 8 degrees. Still cloudy after the showers we had earlier, but we will see a mix of sun and clouds. It's going to be another windy one. A high today of 17. Remembering a friend and calling for justice. Last night, dozens gathered in St. Anne for a vigil for Cam Hewley. The 49-year-old was a well-known chef and volunteer firefighter in the community. He died earlier this month in hospital after an assault. His brother Jason Hewley says it's hard to believe Cam is gone.
Right now, it's a combination shock. Today really set in how real this is right now. Just seeing all the support really made it feel real now.
Hewley's wife and 11-year-old son were in Japan when he died. No charges have been laid. The RCMP homicide unit is investigating. Downtown Winnipeg's Fort Garry Hotel is up for sale again. The 113-year-old hotel on Broadway was put up for sale in 2019, shortly before the pandemic, but was not sold. The new listing was announced by a brokerage and a real estate firm. The landmark hotel has 10 stories and 262 rooms. The Fort Garry is also a National Historic Site. Manitoba athletes are welcoming major new funding commitments from Ottawa. The federal government has earmarked more than $500 million for sport in Canada over the next 5 years. Paralympic medalist Leanne Taylor says athletes are excited.
Honestly, it feels really special. It's like every time someone supports you in some way in sport, it's like a vote of confidence saying like, yes, this is important and we believe in you. And so I think that's what athletes are taking that as, this our government thinks it's important and they believe in us.
The bulk of the funding package will go to national sports organizations to help them invest in safe sport systems and grow participation among young people. Nearly $50 million over 5 years will go to athletes, and that includes better mental health support as well. Manitoba Hydro says it cannot reveal the identities of companies hoping to build wind farms in this province. Hydro is looking for Indigenous-led companies to build wind farms. The Crown Corporation has qualified a number of those companies, but it won't say how many or who they are. Meanwhile, the Manitoba Métis Federation has gone public with its proposal to partner with a major British company to build 30 windmills southeast of Riding Mountain National Park. People in Flin Flon got their first look at the Northern City's new indoor pool complex yesterday. Volunteers have pushed for a new pool for more than a decade. They held donation drives and 50-50 draws to help cover the costs. Board volunteer Cara Plamondon.
It's going to be wonderful for children and adults and everybody in between, just to have the lessons again and to get everybody swimming safely, and the recreation of it, having a nice warm place to go in the winter that is fun and people get activity.
The new pool won't be fully open until more lifeguards are trained. The full opening is set for later this summer. And it is the province's highest honor.
Give me the square where harmonicas glare and the ladies all sing for the swing.
Manitoba opera star Tracy Dahl is among 12 people to receive the Order of Manitoba. She is joined by Métis pro hockey player Jocelyn Larocque, Winnipeg-born singer-songwriter Chantal Kreviazuk, internationally renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. Peter McDonald, Ash Moda of Mondetta Clothing, Elder Billy Shibler, former children's advocate for Manitoba, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber Andrew Harris, Indigenous leader Diane Roussin, Dr. Josh Reimer, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Lotfola Shafai of the U of M Applied Electromagnetics Lab, Doug Stephen, head of WOW Hospitality, and former Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister. They all will be invested into the Order of Manitoba in July at the Manitoba Legislative Building. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Big thanks to our news department overall. So Heather Wells, Joni Nicolo, as well as Megan Ketchison out there, and Darren Bernhardt on the web. With a final look at your Tuesday morning commute, May McKillop's popped back in.
Got a note about Mission approaching Panet. So there's been a collision on the eastbound lane on Mission. There is a tow on scene, so hopefully that doesn't last too long, but expect delays for eastbound Mission Street. Thanks for everyone. Thanks to everyone who called the commuter line today.
We don't know whose toe it is.
That's 2 in 1 show, Mars.
Too dark? All right, I got to stop watching cheesy crime shows. I'm sorry. Yeah. Right? Abby Love. That's my mission to make Abby
Somehow
laugh.
you learned how to pun during the show.
Yeah, I know. I made another one earlier when they were announcing the Order of Canada. I said, heavy hitters on the list. Andrew
proud of you.
Harris? Jocelyn Larocque? Hey! Thanks, May McKillop. All right, let's get to Abby and the actual job he's here to do, which is he's not paid to laugh at my lame puns. He's here to do our final look at our weather.
Yeah, we're looking at more of this mixed spring conditions. Morning clouds across the province will be giving way to sunshine. Looking at the southern regions, we're seeing temperatures between 6 degrees and 9. It would clear. Up north, we're seeing 0 to 5. Right now in Winnipeg, we sit at 8 degrees. It's cloudy out there. You will notice the breeze, so hang on to your sweater or maybe just that light jacket as we shake off the damn start and let this weather system roll through.
All right, thanks, Abby. Hopefully it won't be as damp through the day as it was to begin here. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks for making us part of your morning here on Information Radio on CBC. And coming up next, it's The Current on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.